back. I hope y'all took a minute to write down the really dope recipe that you just got to witness while Rob dances. It was a new one, so make sure you always read the disclaimers because they're always going to be different.
Always going to be different.
And let us know if you make any of the recipes also. So.
Yeah. But with that, thank you all so much for joining us for our visual arts and expression broadcast. My name is Rob, and my lovely and wonderful and talented and great partner in non-crime, Melissa Scambati. How are you doing, Melissa?
I'm good. Are you in trouble? Did we have a fight? Are you sucking up? Did I miss a memo?
I'm just giving you a good intro.
Thank you. It's wonderful. You'll notice our layout looks a little familiar today.
Yeah.
We have a lot of familiarity happening today because we are going to be chatting with a bunch of our cool visual artists from the wonderful fundraiser that you all helped us make such a great success last month. It has been like 2 weeks since fundraiser. It feels both like an eternity and yesterday. But yeah, so we thought we would recap a little bit about fundraiser and all of the beautiful visual art that we got to experience. And we have a lot of very cool discussions and stuff to bring you today.
Oh, absolutely. And you'll notice it does actually show that for the fundraiser, once again, we were able to raise over $5,000 for the Artist Relief Project, which I believe equates out to 25 artists, Melissa?
25 artists. Yeah, Artly World's Artist Relief Project is a really beautiful organization, just in case you've somehow missed all the talking we've done about it. Artly World is an amazing organization, and they put together the Artist Relief Project when COVID hit, and they provide small stipends to artists that are out of work. They have almost 60,000 applications, and they need all the help that they could get, and we were more than happy to dedicate 2 very solid months of our life to helping raise as much as we could. So thank you to all of you who helped us raise the $5,000. We got Dan to shave his legs, Kelly to jump into a pool, and Rob to shave his beard, though you can't tell because it's back already.
Yep, it's already back. It didn't really take a lot of time, but that's kind of why. That's kind of why I usually don't go clean shaven, because even if I tried to go clean shaven, Melissa, then literally my face is just like, no, not possible. And it's fun.
Well, it's back, and we are back, and we hope all of you are doing well. We know things are difficult. I mean, things have always been difficult, and they've been extra difficult lately, and we are here today to share some amazing visual artists, talk about ways that we're going to use art, or that we do use art to cope. Some of the different experiences that our visual artists had with our fundraiser, as well as just their individual projects, and even some discussion about utilizing visual arts in our current events and how we can push forward with that. So we're really looking forward to going over all that with you. Rob, do you have anything else to add? Are we going to introduce our first human?
No, not really much else to add. You always have a way of saying things when I necessarily can't. But yeah, we really, really appreciate all of you joining us here today to be able to follow up with some of the amazing work that was done for the fundraiser. For our first foray into the fundraiser experience, we have the very, very talented Brian Geraghty, who, if you had seen in the lead up to our fundraiser broadcast, he was the creative mind behind our countdown collage that we were able to showcase all the way up to the lead up of the festival. We're going to pop that up on the screen right now as we transition to that.
Good.
And it's just so good. Brian, we could not be more pleased and happier to work with such a talented artist, and we have it up on the screen right now. We are so pleased to be able to work with such a talented artist and to really, really be able to showcase the visual arts in this great and cohesive way. You will notice that you have each of the numbers and each of the days leading up to our fundraiser was featured as a part of what we were doing here. And shoot, what's that? Oh, never mind. Sorry, I got distracted with something. So you'll notice that we have up on the screen all of the different collage elements that Brian was able to put together for us, numbering each of the days leading up to the fundraiser. And if you pay close attention, you'll probably notice one of our friendly friends in the little subsets of it.
And now, if you don't know the story behind the tarantulas and our friend Trish, you do.
Mm-hmm. And if you don't, we can maybe see what Trish is up to.
Trish!
Because I know, let's see.
It's been a while. She was on a little bit of a hiatus. She got to take a break.
What's going on? Oh, wait, what? Oh, no. Oh,
What
no.
happened?
I didn't check the Trish files. They're not available.
Oh, no. So,
all right, well,
Trish is sleeping.
we'll get back to Trish a little bit later on in the broadcast, just so that everybody can see that. Anyway, let's get our lovely faces back on the screen, because everybody knows that a lovely face makes something happen with the doctor. I don't know.
Oh my goodness.
Right.
All right, cool. So I think we're going to turn it over to the interview that our amazing friends and family at Long Island Sound.Love did with Brian Geraghty to discuss his collaging experiences. And then we're going to bring Brian on screen. And then we have all of our other artists. There's going to be a roundtable discussion at the end of this. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere, and enjoy this wonderful interview by Long Island Sound.Love.
Hey guys, I'm Bree Kocha with Long Island Sound.Love, and today we are here with Brian Geraghty, a digital collage artist. Hi, Brian.
Hey, Bree.
So recently, you have been creating collages as a countdown for the VBTLive Presents 2-Day COVID-19 Artist Relief Fundraiser. What a mouthful. What has that experience been for you, and what inspired you to want to hop on board with the countdown?
So Melissa had actually messaged me, and we've been talking about the collages that I've been making and kind of the vibrancy and the kind of funky feel that they have to them. And she was just like, that's totally like a VBT vibe. Like, would you want to get involved in the countdown?
What has been your experience with this pandemic? Like, I understand that you have been using the Pandemic Art Share page to express a lot of your collages. Can you tell me a little bit about what it has been an experience for you? Because from my understanding, you haven't been collaging for that long, but it happens to be something you're very passionate about now.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, I started with like paper collages, and then I found out digital was a thing. And me being someone who's an obsessive thinker, it was a really good way for me to like let my mind loose and just like ping pong kind of all over the place with like all different related colors and images and textures and everything. And from making those, I ended up starting to like, I joined the Pandemic Art Share page and then started posting them. Was like, this is something, you know, weird and different that I'm doing. Hopefully it resonates with people. And, you know, I got lucky enough that it did. So.
What has been your personal experience with your engagements with the people in the Pandemic Art Share? Because I understand that, like, I mean, myself, I've commented on some of the collages before, and I have enjoyed them thoroughly. Has there been any stories or any communications from other people that this has brought to light?
Yeah, I had, it was actually really cool. I had a friend from the music scene messaged me. Onodera actually has a new album out that he just made, and it's called Romance Novel, which I love that he like titled the CD Romance Novel. It's like a clashing of mediums, which is great. He messaged me, and his album artwork is a digital collage that he did, and he's like, you inspired me to like try something new with my work. That's like the kind of thing when you put stuff into the world, like you don't think about who it's going to reach, you just hope it reaches somebody. And it was like, you know, it was like a bonus that it was a friend whose work I respect and everything. But yeah, that was like a really unique situation.
Is there any specific place that you draw your inspirations from?
Yeah, I tend to, something that I've been doing that's been like a weird mix is I'll try to use something that's like a household item that we take for granted, and I'll take a picture of it and angle it a certain way that it's like totally different. You know, like there's one that I did that was like a golden handle on a dresser, and I like added eyes to it and gave it like snakes for arms, and all of a sudden it goes from being a handle to a monster, you know, like that kind of weird stuff, like colors, textures. I mean, I think walking around in the world and like making these, it makes you hyper aware and awake. Like I'm, you know, my brain is never numb to like what I'm experiencing anymore. It's been like a really cool way to engage with the world. And like, you know, I'm on a walk and I'm like, oh my God, look at that fire hydrant, the way that the paint is flecking off of it. Like, use that, you know, some weird, like, you know, anything that I can like pull from. And yeah, nothing is, it's the thing that's crazy is like when you realize you can literally do anything. Like the whole internet is at your access. You have public domain images, you have pictures of things. I mean, you could do literally anything. So it's an endless supply of, the universe is in a collage kind of thing,
So it's giving you a whole different kind of perspective on how to look at things in life, really.
Yeah. I mean, I think I always was like a very visual person with poetry, like with imagery and metaphorical thinking, and being a poet first and then coming into this, I think seeing the world in that way of like screenshotting it with my eyes and kind of seeing it in moments and stuff has really helped for me to kind of picture in my head what I want to come out of the process. And I've realized too that like with digital collages, you can start off with one image and completely go in another direction, and like it ends up being something else than what you started with, which is totally fine,
Wonderful. All right. Well, I'm Bree Kocher from Long Island Sound.Love, and this is a sit down with Brian Geraghty. See you guys later.
Bye.
Wow.
All right.
Great to have
We're
that.
here.
Great to have. Thank you so much, Brianna, from Long Island Sound.Love, for conducting that interview. I'm sure you'll probably see a little bit more of her a little bit later on in this broadcast. But right now, we have the collage artist himself, Brian Geraghty, is here with us doing this interview. How are you doing? How are you doing today, Brian?
Good. Thank you, Rob. Hi, everyone.
Yeah, you got some friends in the chat, Brian. We got Richie. Oh my God, Richie's in the chat.
Yeah.
Melissa Lago's in the chat. Wayne, Justin, all the cool people. Justin said the world is your digital collage oyster shell.
Nice.
Wonderful.
All right.
So, Brian, it was really, really great to have you on with us, especially to be able to allow the visual arts to shine so brightly all the way leading up to the fundraiser. I know that we were very, very proud and pleased to have some of our other guests that you will see later on in this broadcast. But I know that we had when we had first gotten this fundraiser started, there were a lot of musicians that we were able to garner like right away, in terms of maybe not musicians but performers, I would say, that we were able to garner right away. But one of the things that Melissa and I had kind of kept talking about in the weeks leading up to the fundraiser is like, we want more visual art representation. We want more visual art representation. And then so to have your work with the collage be such a huge and important part of the lead up to the fundraiser, I know I've said this to Melissa privately, but I just wanted to say that it really, really was like such an honor and such a pleasure to have your, not just your work and to have your support, but also to have the visual arts so well represented. Because they were just fun. I love just like waking up every day and just seeing like the next iteration of it,
Yeah, it was weird for me too, man.
Yeah. So I guess I know that I've known you as a poet for the most part. In terms of like our interactions together. This is probably one of the first times I've seen like your actual artwork take more of a center stage. So maybe there are other people like me that don't necessarily know you for the artwork of which you do. So could you maybe go into that a little bit?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, poetry and visual art are more tied together for me than I think people realize. And I think the interesting thing was collaging actually started for me where I got stuck with my poetry writing, and I was kind of circling around writing the same topics, and I kind of just felt like I was writing the same poem over and over again, and that poem that I was writing was not getting any better. So it just kind of was like, well, something different needs to happen. And I ended up, the book that I found, my grandma gave me like an old resume book that like is super dated. The information is useless now. But the cover of it had a rose growing out of a typewriter and like this really old style that was like kind of like the old advertisements you see. And I was like, I don't know what to do with that, but something needs to be done. And I like cut that out, cut up like a Shepard Fairey painting that I saw, not an actual painting, but like a magazine ad of his painting. And like put it together and threw it online because I was like, this is weird. Maybe people will like this. And then like somebody was like, what's your Etsy store? Where's your, what galleries are you showing in? I'm like, what? So like sometimes like there's an artist I really love, Austin Kleon, who he talks about sometimes the thing you think you're doing when you should be doing other art is actually the art. Like that's what ends up being the thing that, resonates with people. So it's just trying to stay in that zone of creativity and trying to, if something's not working, there's a lot of different mediums out there, so try other ones too.
Bring up, what was that? I don't know why my camera's not working. Anyway, what was that quote again that you had said about like the doing of art? I'm curious about that.
About basically like, the art that you make. So I guess to kind of give the example of the artist I'm talking about, this will probably illustrate it better. So Austin Kleon, who he made newspaper blackout poetry, it's called, which is basically you just box in words in like a newspaper article, and then you black out what you're not using, and then it leaves like a new thing. And he ended up, people started messaging him and they were like, you're not the first person to invent this and everything else. And like basically told him that he was plagiarizing. And he was like, I basically felt like I could either lean into that or like totally get frightened and stop making stuff. So he wrote a book called Steal Like an Artist. And it was about like that none of us are truly original and that, like the artwork we do is influenced by others. And like for me, I felt like I'm a poet. I go to open mics, I read poetry, I'm in writing workshops. I'm not a collage artist. I don't do this, and it's like, as like me, and I know Melissa has said to people, like even last night we were on an open mic, somebody was like, I wrote this poem, but I'm not a poet. It's like, no, you are. That's what poets do. They write poetry. So it's like, doing the thing, I think, is the thing to focus on and worry about what to call it later. Like it really, I think a lot of people who make art are doing a thing they would have been doing anyway. And somebody just at some point was like, that's amazing. Here's money. And they're like, oh, I guess I'm good at this,
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's really cool to just be able to, like you said, I wrote it in the chat, do the thing, worry about what to call it later. I think that's so important because art is and I've adopted this, over the years of art just being this thing that we should just do. And like, yeah, like I throw like some paint on a canvas. I would not call myself a painter, but I like to go into my studio and get messy and put paint on a canvas. And if someone wants to like be like, you're a painter, yeah, sure, whatever. But it's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because my brain is mushy and I need to just do something that isn't formulating words because as you know, poetry comes with its like words are hard sometimes. Not that visual art is not difficult. So do you find not only, obviously, I know you switched a little more of your focus to visual art because you were writing the same thing over and over. I guess my first question is, did you find that switching to visual art dislodged some things that then enabled you to write different poetry?
Yeah, I think, interestingly enough, I think what I noticed when I was first fumbling with collaging, because as anybody will see, the collages that I did for VBT's countdown were digital. Digital is not something that I started messing with until a few months ago. I was doing paper collages, and what I had noticed was that like the imagery from poetry and kind of that metaphorical way of associative thinking, where you connect two words or thoughts or topics or whatever that are not necessarily intertwined before, and you make them a new thing from combining them, was an amazing transition into collaging. And then after I made the collaging, you know, I've been on like a couple of Zoom chats since quarantine started with other poets, and they're like, hey, could you pull up one of your collages and like we'll write off of it, you know, like, and you know, like to make ekphrastic work, which is just basically writing a piece of poetry or writing something based off of a piece of artwork. And so like they totally seemed unrelated to me at first, but like not only do they fuel each other, but they're very much intertwined and support each other, you know, and I kind of go back and forth between both.
Interesting. I know it's interesting how you kind of bring the parallel about like sort of like the use of like of doing art digitally. I guess when it comes to like the contrast between like doing art analogly, I know because I'm an audio engineer, and especially right now in the current climate that we face, there's been this transition from especially in like live sound, from doing things like analog and then doing things digitally. Analog is more of just like, you know, every knob does a specific function, so you know it's because it's just changing the electronics in a specific kind of way, but you need to have everything like laid out for you in that kind of way, and it kind of like limits you in terms of like you can only really do whatever happens to be like laid out for you. Whereas with like digital, like the canvas that you have is almost infinite. Not necessarily infinite, because we always have like the kind of like structure of like what the piece is, what we're trying to do, what we're trying to accomplish, that always kind of not like motivates the art, but sort of influences the art and like makes the art what it's going to be. But I myself have kind of like been making the switch over to more and more digital work. And it's interesting how, you know, these changes in how the mediums are expressed very much like influences like the art itself, and sort of provides like that new perspective in terms of like being able to work and what we can work with.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I wanted to just. I know the book that you had mentioned was "Steal Like an Artist" by Austin Keaton. Is Cleon? Is that correct?
Cleon, Kleon.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. I just wanted to actually throw that up on the screen just for a little bit, just in case anybody would be interested in the book itself. The book is called "Steal Like an Artist: 10 Things Nobody Told You About Being Creative." It is a New York Times bestseller. I think I also have, and I think I have the expert, like an excerpt of the book itself. That you said you're talking about, like the excerpt where it talks about like how nothing is original.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I was able to find that right off, so we have that up on the screen right now. Yeah, but I'm really like, I'm very, very interested to like check out this book. Especially since like there's a lot of like unwritten and like unspoken rules about like how to engage with art, how to be an artist, and like how to be able to effectively utilize different mediums. And with a lot of the changes that have taken place, especially with like the digital revolution, have definitely changed a lot of how different people interact and engage with art. And you know, your collage is just like a perfect example of that.
I'm curious, with isolation, obviously everything went digital. And I think it's interesting that, even though I know it wasn't directly related, that you happened to start making your art digitally during a time when a lot of things went digital. Did you find it difficult Did you find that difficult because you were on a phone, on a computer, you were kind of being forced into doing these things already to interact with anybody. And now usually we take our art and we, I mean, I'm a digital artist, like in terms of graphic design, so I get it. But like, how did you feel about an art that you used to make by hand? You've now switched over to making digitally, but it also happened to be during a time where literally everything is digital now. Like, did you find there was a disconnect, a reconnect? Were you sick of staring at things?
Yeah, so there's a couple of like practical answers, which I think when we read about famous artists, there's kind of this mythology around them, and we forget that practicality sometimes leads to great art. And it's not just this like the muse dropped down and was a lightning bolt, and she was in, a sundress and she was beautiful and he had an idea. and he wrote a 500-page novel in 12 minutes. It's like, that's not really what happens. You know, it's
If
more like,
only.
Yeah, the apple
yeah,
falls
right?
from the tree and suddenly gravity.
Yeah. So, like, the interesting thing is kind of like, to touch on what Rob was saying as far as like those unspoken rules. I literally sat down and, like, I had taken an improv class. Melissa was also in that improv class, and one of the things that the teacher said, which has literally like changed my life, was he was like, basically like, what are the rules that you make for yourself that are total, like, that don't exist? And like basically like the rules you make for yourself don't have to be there. So like the first thing that I know for me, what I had with digital collage was, in my head, I was like, that's cheating. You have to use paper and glue. And it's like, no, digital collage is a very valid form. And even collage.com, which is like the main source of collaging, that's KOLAJ for anyone who wants to check it out. It's like all things collage. It made me realize, I was like, this is a rule I'm completely making up. No one did this to me, and I'm going to try digital art. And then I was like, this is really practical because I don't have 5 million like little tiny scraps of paper laying all over the place. I already hoard books, so to hoard magazines was like, you know, so only so much space, right? So it just was one of those things where I made the transition because it was more of like, not only is this practical in terms of like, I shut my phone off and I cleaned up, you know, like I don't have paper all over the place. It was more of a thing of like, basically like Rob said, you kind of have like literally anything you want to use. And plus you can take pictures of stuff and use that and then mix it in with the collaging, you know, and even things I've done too, that's a cool thing, is like, there are beautiful things to use in collages that if you do them with paper, you get to cut that thing one time. You do it digitally, you screenshot it, and, you know, you like crop it. You could do it as many times as you want, you know, and you still have the whole thing to use. So, I mean, the main thing that I would say is like, question yourself when you are shy from trying an art form. Do you have rules that you've made that are holding you back? You know, because like, you don't need them. They're not going to help you. Most art is this spontaneous combustion of insanity that we all sit down in this, like, you know, moment where we just let it all come out, and we kind of let what our intuition is guide what we're doing, and not what our logic is telling us to do. Like, make the thing and then edit it logically later, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
So I actually wanted to ask you some more specific questions about the collage while we still have some time left.
Sure.
We are gonna. I've been throwing up the collage like in and out between our conversations, but I wanted to know specifically, because there's a lot of really, really great art that's happening, and a lot of really, really amazing creativity that went into all the different pieces. I want to know, which one is your favorite, if you have one.
Yeah, so that's interesting. I don't know. I think this is going to be such a cop-out answer, but I feel like it's totally mood dependent. You know, like, I can wake up one day and have one of them be my favorite, and the next day I'll be like, why didn't I do more of this in there? You know, like, I feel like anybody who does an art form is constantly picking it apart. And, you know, a year from now, the work that you do now, you'll look back on and probably hate it, but do it anyway. You know, like,
yeah, I guess so. But we actually we have a call out in the chat right now. We want everybody who's watching right now. We have all the flyers up on the screen. We want to know which one is your favorite flyer. So take a look, cast your votes. Let's see what's up. I know for me, I think my favorite. I have like two different like. I'd say like I'd give out like 3 different awards. Like,
I say it depends on the approach you're looking
my
for.
favorite in terms of like my favorite in terms of like the layout is probably the 8th one with like the dip and the guitars and the pianos, and it's just the background is just so nice. It just like composed so like well. I would say like the most visually interesting is probably for me number 6, just because I really, really love like the colored pencils and like the way that it kind of like coalesces together. But my like guilty pleasure favorite is probably number 4 because of the trumpets.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. I'm gonna agree. 8 is definitely the layout that I like the most. I like 2. I think 2 is wildly captivating in terms of like the color, the context. I like the typewriter. And like 1 is just so much fun. Especially the like kind of cross-eyed looking in at the butterfly is definitely cool. If there was a cat in one of them, that would have been my guilty pleasure pick. Because we're strictly spiders here. Yeah, I think 2 is probably my favorite overall, but 8 is definitely one of my favorite in terms of composition and that creativity of using the dip bowls as like a number. They were fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. The one thing that I will say, and this is really to mention maybe more of an obscure art form that informed one of the collages that I was not expecting. I think it might have been number 4. Was the one with the cards that was red, white, and black. So there's a tattoo art form called trash polka that uses the red and black very well, and that like I had gone to an art show actually at Sip This where I met an artist who did a couple of Deadpool paintings with like the red and black contrast and all different things with those red, black, and white kind of colors. And I was like, I don't know when I'm ever going to use this because I don't do tattoo art, but I have to remember this. So yeah, that might be my favorite one just because it's like so obscure. The thing that influenced it was tattoo art, which is not a thing that I would usually directly connect to collaging.
Nice.
That's cool.
Which one was that again?
I think that was number 4. Was the one with the playing cards.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, nice.
We got another vote for 4. Wayne says 4. Paul says 8. Also, so we've got good taste in this group.
Melissa Longo,
they're all fantastic.
Melissa Longo also says, Brian Geraghty, it is so difficult to choose only one.
It's super cool to see them all together. When I made the collage of your collages, I was so like, I put them on the screen and I was just like, oh my God, these look incredible together. So like they're cohesive and just the colors are stunning. Very cool. All right, cool. I think we need to switch over to our next friendly guest, but we are going to have Brian back for a wonderful roundtable discussion about a whole lot of different topics. So Brian, any closing remarks for your individual human self?
Just that it was a pleasure to be part of the VBT broadcast in any way possible, because I totally love what you guys do. And it was a really nice challenge too, because Melissa messaged me with like a week and she's like, hey, so 9 collages maybe? And I was like, yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah, I'm sick. I'm like, yes. So you know.
I was like, I don't know if I'll be able to do this. And, you know, like it kind of like lit a fire under me to get them done. It was like a really cool thing like that. I've never really had numbers in any of my collages either. So that was also a nice thing also. But yeah, overall, just thank you for involving my artwork. And, you know, I would love to connect with anybody who wants to talk art in general or connects to any of my pieces. So thank you all.
Yeah, and we put your contact info on the collage that we put up before, so that's on there. Nice. And we'll drop it again in the chat. And like I said, Brian will be back later, so don't go anywhere. I believe up next we are going to have our wonderful friends Pete and Andrea from the Muse Exchange. So we're going to switch over to another awesome interview with Long Island Sound.Love.
Yep.
And we'll be right back.
Oh, before we do that, though, I know that there was a call out in the chat for DJ Trish. So.
Oh, Trish! Is Trish awake?
Trish, let me actually wait. Let me see if Trish is awake.
Let's check on Trish.
Let's check on Trish. But I know that coming up next,
Trish has been partying.
She has. I know coming up next we have the Muse Exchange, who will be with us in just a bit. But before we get to that, let's take a look at DJ Trish and see what she's up to, and then we'll be right back. DJ Trish, I'm dynamite. It's dynamite Trish.
Hey guys, it's Brie Kocha of Long Island Sound.Love, and today I'm here with the Muse Exchange, Andrea and Pete. How you guys doing?
Great. Doing good.
Wonderful. So could you talk to me a little bit about how the Muse Exchange was dreamt up and created?
Well, we've been going for quite some time. We actually started at a place called the Pisces Cafe. And so we've just kind of been carrying the torch throughout the decades, and it landed at the Velvet Lounge and now here online.
So you mentioned a little bit about the Velvet Lounge, right? So I've experienced those events myself, and honestly, they're a hoot. But how has it been transferring the in-person experience to an online experience?
Well, accessibility of events has grown sort of exponentially because we've had to, out of necessity. And I would absolutely love to see that continue so that people can, you know, access art and access live performance from anywhere.
Agreed.
Our first virtual open mic was on 3/19, so it was really early on. It was the week right after we had to cancel our in-person event.
How has that experience been? Is there any parts of that you find maybe easier than the in-person?
I think what's really interesting is that somehow, I think maybe because our community puts art first, that we've really kind of been able to keep the culture intact, and it feels like a live Muse, even though we've sort of shifted over to this virtual experience. So our mic is a little bit different than others in that we have people send in pre-recorded content, and then we all gather and have this sort of interactive chat aspect to it.
So it's my understanding that you guys try to spotlight a variety of different mediums.
From my perspective, it's really important for us to kind of maintain this open forum where pretty much anything goes, with like the limits are just extended a little bit beyond what maybe sometimes is socially acceptable and things like that. And it's more of a safe space for the performer rather than for an audience. But how that's translated virtually is our artists are able to not only bring their content, but create a context for their content in the production of these videos that they've been putting together.
With that all in mind, how would you guys like to see the future of the arts?
I mean, something like this, a mixture of this and the live events. I think what this brings together for us is like a chance for our community is big and kind of spread out all over the place. So it brought a lot of people together, and it also brought a different aspect to a lot of these artists. So like a lot of the poets are doing a lot of visual stuff that they're not necessarily used to. Visual artists are kind of bringing something new to the realm. So like, I think we're like, I would say more of like a cross-disciplinary sort of type of art, because you know, if you can do one thing, you probably can do other things. There's other mediums of expression, and this has kind of forced us all into, you know, creating another medium.
Yeah, and I think that forcing people into that like space of having to adapt what they're doing to communicate is a really fertile ground for artists and for creativity.
What would you say is the ultimate goal of the Muse Exchange for the community and for you guys personally?
To create powerful content, not to restrict yourself as far as, you know, like I feel like a lot of artists kind of, especially with poets, you know, they, and I think it's important. There's just something I would like just to push the limits of that, push the limits of what we can possibly know about ourselves, about others, and just dig deeper, you know, find a way to dig deeper, put something, you know, beautiful out there that wasn't possible, you know, that you couldn't have thought before. And Andrea had talked about something that is happening during our mic, is that we're also kind of responding to each other's work because it's happening in a pre-recorded format. So next week, it's like a build. It's like I saw what this one did and that one did, and we're all sort of respond. Not that we're not one up. It's not a challenge. We're not one upping each other. It's like we're seeing what is possible because the other person is doing it.
Like a creative game of telephone. An idea, like you get an idea from somebody else and it becomes something, and another person gets that idea and it becomes something else, and sort of to kind of keep that conversation growing, both meaningful for me and I think for a community in general.
Yeah, and also like a love and a genuine appreciation of each other's contribution. You know, that's one of the things that I've seen really be a big part of this, is really genuine, heartfelt, like love for other people's work. And it's very, very nice. It's very refreshing.
It's inspiring.
Yeah, it is.
Wonderful. Well, thank you guys for taking the time to talk to me today. This was Bree Kocha of Long Island Sound.Love with Andrea and Pete of the Muse Exchange. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for your patience. As you can see by this blurry screen that's in front of me, I guess I really gotta change the lighting in my studio. It's really starting to mess with my focus. But we have some small technical difficulties. We're really glad that we were able to have the Muse Exchange. Thank you once again so much to Brianna for conducting the interview with Long Island Sound.Love, which you'll probably see more for a little bit later in the broadcast. But we're going to throw up our friendly neighborhood tarantula technical fix and spider, Trish, who is going to be assisting us with what we got to do. So just hang tight for just a moment, and we will be right back. Yeah. So thank you so much for your patience. We will be right back. VBT Live, doing all that cool stuff. Here we go. All right, wonderful. Thank you so much, Trish, for getting that all sorted out. I don't know what sort outed means. All right, well, we're just going to get a couple more things taken care of, but we have Pete and Andrea here from the Muse Exchange. We're going to get started with their interview in just a moment, so just hang out, enjoy Trish's DJ vibes, and we will be right back. Do not go anywhere. Thank you all so much for joining for this broadcast.
All right. Trish had us partying in the green room, spinning like a pro. Thanks, Trish. That was wonderful. Hey, friends. We are here with Pete and Andrea of the incredible Muse Exchange. All the artists supporting all the artists, supporting all the artists, supporting artists. Because y'all are amazing. That was easily our favorite thing that happened for the entire fundraiser. I just want you to know that.
It makes me so happy.
It was a continuing trend. How are you both today?
I'm doing well.
Yeah, same here. I feel good.
Good. It's hard these days, so that's actually really nice to hear.
So I think I wanted to maybe open up this interview by asking, because I know that like the supporting artist call, or like chants, or however you want to label that, it's something that eventually like people started to pick up on like during the broadcast, and everybody started to like jump in, even to the point where when we had the beard loosening ceremony all the way at the end.
Yeah. Artly World used it.
Yeah.
Artly World themselves.
We used that.
Yeah. The chat mod for, I don't know if it was Rashawn or who runs the Artly World chat, but they at the end when Rob was shaving the beard was like, artist supporting. I was like, yes.
Yes.
It was awesome. It was a shining moment.
So
literally nothing makes me happier than that.
Where did that come from? I'm really curious. It's like such a great idea.
Well, I wrote it in one of the Google forms that you sent out, and then it was just in my head over and over again. And when we went to record our intros and outros, we just made it into a thing.
Yeah, it was like a joke thing. I don't even think we were trying to record a regular promo, and then we just started doing that, and then so we went with that.
Well, did a thing, and then we did it again.
That seems very appropriate for VBT as well. So we love that, and we love both of you. I'm kind of curious because I kind of want to dive into a lot of the things. Obviously, the two of you work together, but are very much not in the same room. So you have a very similar experience to Rob and I in needing to curate events. I know the interview touched upon a variety of things. How is the event curation in separate locations?
I think it's working really well. I think we have a really similar sensibility in terms of, what works, what doesn't, and what's kind of in the spirit of the community that, we've been shifting online. So from my perspective, it's been easy to work with each other, and our thing makes a lot of sense online.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Agreed.
One of the things we really, really loved about having you guys is there was so much like diversity of like presentation, of medium, of like art form, and to see all of those like different mediums be able to like really, really like blend together and like bind together. It really was just this like beautiful moment through like for both days of the broadcast, where I almost felt that like it was one of those things where it's like, see people, this is how it's done. This is how you combine all the arts together into this beautiful hodgepodge salad bowl, soup, whatever you like to mix together. It doesn't matter because there's plenty of that stuff. But
I feel like that feels good. I feel like that feels good because that's the original intention of what Muse is. Like that's exactly what Muse set out to do. We were in a world where each thing had its own open mic, and you go to those open mics and it was like you just needed something to break it up. And it also like it wasn't enough that it's just like, well, I like this art too. It's like, well, why can't that artist be in the room painting at the same time? Why can't these things, if poetry influences this, influences music and influences, visual art, why can't all those same influences participate together? Like, it doesn't make sense to keep everything, well, this guy plays a guitar, he doesn't belong here. Like, or this person paints a painting, or this person does graffiti. It didn't make any sense for us. And so that's what we really dove headlong. And I feel like this is the exact culmination, like this is the moment that it really kind of it all came together.
It's really exciting. I think everybody who participates in the Muse has like almost like explosive creative energy, you know, like, and when you sort of mix those together or sort of bounce them off each other, it's like, it's really inspiring and really, really powerful. It makes me like feel there is like almost like a current of creativity running through it.
Yeah, I definitely, and I want to impart a little bit because I know, Andrea, I've said it to you, but, you know, I was a spoken word, I was a poet. I wrote, I went to workshops, I hung out at a couple open mics, but I became a spoken word poetess because of the Muse. You held the poetry slam, and I started going to Muse, and that was when my art shifted. That's when I saw myself as an artist. I wasn't just a poet. I was an artist, and it was so beautiful to see all of those things coming to, I mean, the poetry slam was in an art gallery. It wasn't just in a bar. Like, I was surrounded by art, and I was meeting people from all of these, and that was my first real introduction into the Muse scene. And it meant so much to visualize that. And VBT, as everyone knows, is the goal of that quilt of everyone's art coming together and being one thing. And then having y'all participating in VBT, in the artist supporting artists, is, it felt very full circle for me as an individual to know that you have shifted and shaped in so many ways who I am as an artist today, because you showed that out of the box capability, and that to have that brought to our platform and knowing that we have similar goals was really, really amazing. So I want to thank you tremendously, as on a personal note, as well as a note from VBT.
Yeah, I remember when I saw your submission form, I was like, this person's in, right? Like, yeah. I was ready to like fight for it, and then everybody else was like, yeah, this person's in.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
But yeah, we have a question in the chat. If there's some advice for those who are shifting their brand or themselves into an online platform, since obviously the Muse is very much an in-person collective and experience. So,
advice? I mean, I still feel like I'm flying by the seat of my pants in a lot of ways. So,
Very mutually felt.
Just keep trying, try some new things. And I think ultimately, if you have sort of a culture and like an overarching idea of what you do in person or what you want to do, just stay true to it, and you'll find an avenue that makes sense for it. There's so many options and so many ways to kind of translate something from an in-person experience online and kind of maintain the culture and the vibe and make it engaging and something that people sort of want to be a part of. And you just have to sort of lead with your own mission and lead with that, and it'll help you find that kind of niche.
And I think also make something that you'd want to watch.
Yeah,
like that's, you know, like make something that you feel like oh, I'd watch this is cool, you know. Like I feel like just thinking just in the vein of like things that you think other people do is cool and works and makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I know it's been a shift within ourselves, within what we've been doing here at VBT, to like sort of figure out how to transition what we've been doing all along. Melissa with all of the community work that she's done, and myself with all of the I guess production work that I've done. We've had our own journey of like figuring out how to like transition not just like any sort of brand that we're trying to do, but even just like our skill set to be able to like have it exist in a virtual platform. And we're still in the process of figuring out what's the best way that we can not just do what's best for our skill sets, but being able to showcase other people as well. And I think that at the very least, like your presentation throughout the broadcast was a really amazing way of showcasing the power of digital, you know, the power to be able to truly like lay out your performance in the way that you want. A performance that sticks out to me the most, especially there's that one poet that had like a song like behind him, and basically they had like all of these like Christmas, like red Christmas lights like adorning over their face.
Travis. Oh yeah, Travis.
Oh, that performance is so good.
So dope.
Yes.
So good. So memorable. And what I actually really love about sort of translating a performance online is that something that you don't think about when you're performing live necessarily is controlling the space that you're in and controlling the context for your work, and kind of paring down all of those things that exist in a live performance. So like an audience that may or may not be up to their own little thing, and a bar and a bartender and people getting drinks and people walking into the place can be a little bit out of your control in a lot of ways. And kind of translating online, we see artists like really controlling the context for their work, and that is lighting, that is setting, that is we have people doing really incredible like green screen things, and like really kind of leaning into the control that they have there and how that aids and impacts their performance and the work that we had sort of like when I think of people's performances in real life, I sort of like think of the performance as like a little bubble, and I try and forget the stuff that happens around it. And certainly I think that there's no kind of there's no substitute for when somebody gets behind a microphone, the room goes quiet, and it's like this like really like this moment of connectivity. But I think I get a lot more out of artists, like just me personally, because I'm a visual person. I think I get a lot more out of artists being able to control almost everything about their performance.
It's curated. It's providing that curated space. Even when we do broadcasts for other people, like the website, we create a separate page on the VBT website, and it is color coded and it has their logos, and it turns into their own little mini webpage. And for our broadcasts, people will notice like we're creating different themes and we're trying to curate that experience. And it's cool. It's cool to be able to control all those little elements. And you're right, there is nothing like getting up behind a microphone and having the room go quiet and just kind of doing your thing. But it is cool because it becomes a full art piece. You are fully curating. It's like it is your own gallery. And I think it's amazing.
Yeah.
And
there's this one artist in the Muse, Kenny Gordon.
I was just going to bring up Kenny Gordon. Yes.
Like his work, I'm like thinking, and pretty much everyone else's work is sort of like, it's getting me thinking about the ways that we can showcase performance in non-performance settings. So like, I'm like, these pieces are perfect for a gallery. These pieces are perfect for a gallery. I can't wait until we can, curate something together with physical art and virtual art together. I can't wait. I think that's so exciting. And I don't know. I'm just like a super fan of everyone's work. So curating is super easy for me.
Yeah, that's so funny because it really leads into the next thing that I was going to ask and to suggest was what kind of growth are you seeing? Because the Muse is a family, and you've known a lot of these people a long time, and I know many of them performed in the fundraiser. And Pete, I know that you've started introducing some visual elements to your art as well. Like, what are the growths and the changes that you're noticing in your artist family that they're doing and they're stepping out? And Kenny Gordon is a super great example of some very primo, amazing content. So do you have like other notices that you've been like, wow, like I'm noticing these cool things? Or
well, I feel like I noticed Mike Clarity, who's one of the real founding fathers, or the person who first picked up the torch of Muse. His entire style has like completely transitioned into like his video editing is off the charts, and it's almost more video editing than it is poetry. Like his poetry is almost like the smaller part of it. And so, but he was always that way, but he just never had a way to put that together. So now this offered him that opportunity to put it together. And I don't know, it's exciting. He's really exciting. Kenny Gordon's really exciting. I feel like Rosa Dodaro last week did something really dope. People are really starting to think about like, because it doesn't just have to be, you don't have to just watch me saying it. You could, like that's fine too. Like, I'm not saying that that's wrong. I don't want to make anybody diminish that. But it could be, a video of your cat. It could be, there's all sorts of free or, low cost video editing software that you could put on your phone. And, you could really, sky's the limit. Like you could really make beautiful stuff with very little knowledge of how it even really works. Like it's really been wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really great to see that.
Yeah, I feel really good about it.
It's a great opportunity for people to just stretch their legs. I know it's something I'm actually very envious of it because like it was a plan of mine, and then obviously VBT happened and I've been a little busy, but I love the idea of like being able to just add those extra elements of things that you just don't get in a in-person setting, and making the best of that.
It's so cool. It's how cool is it to like get even more of a glimpse into the artist process and the art, like the way the artists arrive to that moment.
Yeah, I love everything about it. It's been a very much silver lining in this current situation that we're all in. I feel badly for people who are not in the arts community. I don't know what they're doing.
No, they're ready to blow their brains out, I'm sure.
But like, this is so beautiful and moving, and it's just been such a great experience to just watch people try things they've never tried before, do weird things. Even for the open mic, we had someone this past week do OBS overlays while they performed, and they looped in like a video of them dancing when they were like a small child, and like did other overlays. Like, we're having people that are just getting into these little things that they're stretching their legs.
Wait, they did that on Zoom?
Yep.
You could do those overlays?
Yeah, you could do overlays on Zoom. Oh, we're going to do a thing about it.
Oh, we're going to do a thing about it. We have some fun stuff.
Oh, that's really cool.
Here's the thing. Like, there's so many times where I'll go to a show and I'll think to myself, like, God damn it, if only they had a video wall behind them. You know,
right? Yeah, like
video
a video
walls are hard to like
deal.
set up and to do this, but virtually it's just like, oh, video behind you.
Wall.
There it is.
That's so cool. That's really, really cool.
Super cool.
So I'm sure
we're definitely
probably discuss this and bring this up during the roundtable discussion that we're going to be having later. And Andrea and Pete will be joining us for that roundtable discussion happening later. We're going to be featuring Brian. We're going to have both Andrea. We're going to get our next guest who's going to be coming up soon, Justina. She's going to be also part of that roundtable. And we also have a special guest lined up who's going to join into the conversation and stuff like that. Is that a good summary, Melissa?
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to bring in some new faces and revisit all of our wonderful friends. And I just want to thank again the Muse from a personal, bottom of my heart, thankful appreciation.
Thank you.
And on behalf of VBT as well. Y'all are just an embodiment of and a huge inspiration for what we strive to do on a digital platform. So thank you for being so intense.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just being great human beings, yeah.
Thanks, man. I appreciate
Nobody go anywhere. We will be back in just a moment. We are going to put up our interview now. Long Island Sound.Love and Galaxy Gus. I believe Brianna does this interview as well?
Yes.
All right. So you're going to see our wonderful friend Brianna from Long Island Sound.Love again. And don't go anywhere.
Waiting for stuff.
Waiting for guys.
Hey guys, it's Bree Kocha of Long Island Sound.Love, and today I'm here with Justina Hayes of Galaxy Gus Art. Hey Justina.
Hi.
So previously you've worked with Abandoned Ship, and I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about how you got into that and the process of creating the artwork.
So I've been friends with Nick and really any member of the band as it's changed throughout the years. Nick had talked to me about the fact that he really wanted to include art for each song. And Mike had been dabbling in animation a little bit. So I created all of the designs digitally, and then he animated them all and made them all the cool videos that they are, if you watch them on YouTube. Ben Ship, you know.
Go peep that, please. So I've seen your art. I love your art. But I've also seen you work with different mediums, because you ventured a little bit into the digital world, and I've seen you mostly work with canvas and oils and acrylics. So do you have a favorite type of medium that you like to work with?
So right now I am enjoying still learning digital. It is a huge learning curve for me, being much more traditional usually. So I haven't worked with oils in a long time, but I kind of want to get back into them because I miss them. But I do a lot of acrylic paintings, and that's definitely where I'm most comfortable. I mean, I feel like I'm always growing, but that's definitely my strongest suit. And probably my favorite, I guess.
So speaking about music and its inspiration on some of your pieces and that workflow, it's my understanding that you'll be doing a little bit of live painting for VBTLive COVID-19 fundraiser.
Yes, I will be.
Can you tell me a little more about that?
Yes. So next weekend, during the fundraiser, they will be checking in with me throughout the day. I guess in between artists and announcements and things like that. And I will be working on a piece. And like I said, they'll just be checking in with me throughout the day, and I will hopefully be finishing a piece for you throughout the weekend.
Speaking of this mystery piece, is there any hints that you want to give us towards the theme or what maybe you will be painting?
So I don't really know why, but since the beginning of like springtime, cherry blossoms have really been on my mind. So I was trying to figure out what I would work on for this, and I decided that since I keep thinking about them, maybe I should just paint them. So I did actually start sketching out what I will be transferring over to my canvas.
I'm actually really excited to see what you create because when I was younger, we had this tree on my property that looks very similar to a cherry blossom tree. It's not a cherry blossom, but it would always, I don't know, they always give me a sense of home and make me feel comfortable. So like, I don't know, I'm very hyped for that. But, you know, you're going to be creating art home and live. And, you know, I know that you've done live painting at venues and in person with a lot of people interacting with you and being there for that experience. So, you know, how has this quarantine impacted that artistic process for you?
It's definitely made things really hard. I'm looking forward to the fundraiser for the fact that I was kind of talking about this earlier, where the way people will be able to check in with me throughout the show is, it kind of reminds me of the way people would check in throughout a show in real life. Like a lot of times, you know, it's at bars and people are hanging out and they're going to see the band, and you know, a lot of the same people who find themselves, you know, into the art will like stop by and they're like, wow, okay, like you've gotten far since the last time I was here. So I feel like that's kind of reminiscent of that, or I'm hoping it will be. And honestly, I feel like I've talked to a few artists who felt the same way. It's really been a huge block. I've had days where I felt super inspired and painted a lot and painted for days, and then I would just feel burnt out and not really feel inspired, which is hard when people are trying to commission work from you because, you know, if it's not there, it's not there. But it's coming back, and you know, especially with something like this, it really helps keep that sense of community flowing, because you don't always think about how much you depend on that for your creative process until it's not there, until you don't really have that same support system wherever you go, you know.
I'll be cheering you on from the guidelines and watching all of your paintings, and maybe I'll just shoot you a few messages here and there like I would at a bar, you know, nudging into you and being like, hey. Thank you for talking to me today. This is Bree Coach of Long Island Sound.Love, and this is Justina Hayes of Galaxy Gus Art.
Three, two. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for Brianna once again for just being. It was really just such a great. It was really just so great having Brianna be a part of what we were doing here at VBT. You know, donating her interviewing expertise, and to have the Long Island Sound.Love team behind the fundraiser, and just being able to showcase all these great and wonderful and creative people We once again, we really do appreciate Long Island Sound.Love for their sponsorship, for their support, for everything that they've been doing. We really appreciate you so much. So we will be back in just a moment with Justina, who's going to be showcasing some of the artwork that she had been performing for the fundraiser. We will be back in just a second, so do not go anywhere. We will be right back with Galaxy Gus Art.
We are back, and we are joined by our wonderful friend Justina from Galaxy Gus Art. Hello, you look lovely today.
Thank you.
You look more well rested than when you painted for 36 hours.
I'm definitely much more well rested at this point.
We are really excited to have you here, and I would love to hear a little bit about how you felt about that 36-hour painting experience with us.
It was a lot of fun. I loved hanging out with you guys. Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it, and I think it was really great that you guys raised so much money for such a good cause. So I just had a lot of fun. Sunday was tiring. I was tired by Sunday. I was, but
yeah, that's more what I meant. I mean, I'm glad you like us, but I meant like, how did you feel? Like, that's a lot of work. I mean, so the painting behind Justina, in case you did not for some reason watch even a moment of our 36-hour fundraiser, which I think would be pretty difficult, but Justina started this from a blank canvas into this beauty right here. And she
not done.
I was going to say, I believe she said it was not done yet, but this was over a 36-hour process that we kept checking back in with her to see all the cool stuff that was going on. It was awesome to watch that transform.
Yeah, I definitely, like, my arm was pretty numb by the end of the first day. So I had to give my shoulder some rest. But I also actually, from sitting in the chair, I didn't even think about it. I was like, I had so much pain in my leg. The next day I was like, what happened? I was like sitting against the metal bar in my chair all day, and I was like, why did it hurt so much? I'm good.
Yes, Rob and I have learned the value of a good chair, or the detriment that a bad chair.
I don't even want to show you the state that my current chair is in. It's like very
Rob and I do not have good
lopsided
seating situations.
Listen, for everybody who's watching this broadcast, find
chairs
yourself
for VBT.
a good chair. If you have chairs for VBT, we will take them. But get yourself a good chair.
Cool. Well, yeah. So thank you for joining us again today. And we get to see not only the piece that you were working on, but some of your other really awesome artwork. I love those portraits. Those are beautiful.
I actually started these at the beginning of quarantine. And They're both unfinished. Most of these pieces are unfinished, all works in progress that I'm kind of working on simultaneously. And I actually plan on doing a full series of portraits like this. They're just kind of meant to be magical type feeling creatures, people. And yeah, that's really it. This one is very much at the beginning stages. She needs a lot more layering. She's a lot closer to being done.
I see.
Great, I love it.
I'm curious. The green portrait that's all the way at the
Yeah,
top.
I'm very
right-hand
interested
corner.
in that.
I'm very interested.
I was
in that.
definitely gonna ask you to pop that one up. And
So this one, I actually started. I'm just gonna drop things. I started this at Blue Point Brewery for the Log Jam.
Oh, okay.
Last year. And it's another one that I go back to a lot and work on often. She started actually as one of my Drawloween, my October drawings. It's another artist that hosts it, and I do a piece every day, usually for the month of October. So it was just one of the sketches, and I liked it so much that I decided to actually bring it to life in a full piece.
Cool. I'm glad you brought it closer because you can really see the webbing, and like I couldn't see all of that before. That is really cool.
My camera's having trouble, but
no, it looks great. Very cool.
Interesting. So yeah, I actually while we're on that subject, I wanted to ask you about some of the work that you do in terms of sort of. I know you are somebody that I have seen around the music scene a lot. And your art has always been something that kind of coalesces as a part of like the different shows that I've seen you be a part of, and a lot of the pieces you create like on the spot, like as the music is happening, as the show is happening, as the night is happening. And I was always very, very fascinated by that. And it's one of the things that's definitely kept me very, very interested in your work. Can you sort of go into a little bit of like your experience with like painting alongside like live music and like what that sort of means to you with your experience and your artwork?
I've been a fan of live music since I was very young. And it, I guess, was just a real way for me to connect at a deeper level with the music. And it was also really a way for me to come out of my shell as an artist, because I've always been I was always very insecure about my process and didn't really like showing pieces when they weren't done. And it really caused me to open up and just even talk about my work better and with more people. And yeah, I mean, that's really it. I owe that also to a lot of my friends who kind of helped keep me inspired and pushing me to do that. And Kevin Tuwaru is one of those people who really pushed me to put myself out there more and, you know, join in open mics. I don't think I would have necessarily put myself out there as much if it wasn't for people's support like that and words of encouragement. So I appreciate everyone who's ever said anything like you did or have encouraged me to keep bringing my stuff out there to these shows.
You have some love in the chat as well. Kelly Bartley says hearts, Justina. Melissa Longo said yes, Justina Marie, so beautiful. And Samantha Marie Raya sent many, many hearts.
Sam, I miss you. Come home.
Yeah.
Come home when it's safe to do so. You come home.
Yeah. I think she's on a road trip right now. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we miss her.
So you're getting a lot of love from a lot of places.
Yeah.
I love you all back.
So I wanted to also ask, there's like a small little painting all the way to the top left corner that's sort of like like a girl like meditating in a corner. And it just she looks so peaceful, like just from like what I'm able to see. And I'm very curious about the work.
I'm gonna break your heart. She's a lot more sad than she looks peaceful, but.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
This is actually a self-portrait, in a way. It wasn't intended to be that way, but it is. It's titled December, and it was inspired by, I'm really terrible, I'm gonna forget his name, but a composer who's not even super well known. I learned about him from a podcast for artists, and without realizing, I was listening to the song, and I actually saw this in my head while I was listening to it. And I looked down, and the name of the song is December. And December is a month for me that's a little difficult because I lost my mother in that month. So this kind of all came from that. And as I painted it, I kind of realized that I was more or less, I guess, painting who I was at that time. Oh. So I love this painting. I will never part with it.
Of course.
It's beautiful.
Thank
so
you.
Do you find yourself often starting a piece in one direction and ending up in another?
Sometimes, yes. She's a good example of that because this isn't actually how I initially pictured her. Again, she's not even close to being done, but I saw her much differently at first. And then as I started painting it, I started seeing her more with wings and having a feeling of freedom. And that piece up there, the skull, was the same way. It was very different. And when I joined you guys in for the open mic, it took on a whole new form. So I think every time that I revisit a piece that I'm in the process of working on at different stages of my growth, it tends to, they all kind of change like that because I'm just always trying to improve my skill level. So it ends up kind of changing it as I take too long to finish all my work.
So do you take revisits to pieces that maybe you even felt were done, but maybe it's a year or two, or I don't know what your longest gap would be where you've revisited a piece that you were like, oh, this is done. And then all of a sudden you're like, no, this isn't done, or I want to do something.
For sure. I actually wish I had the one out here that is a perfect example of that. I might actually, but I definitely have had pieces that I don't have a good example of what this used to look like, but this was one of the first paintings that I actually really got into with acrylics.
Love
and
that.
It was actually really, really not this good.
Yeah. So as your techniques improved.
Yeah. So a couple of years after, I actually went in and I basically reworked the whole painting. And looking at the pictures side by side of what it looked like originally, it's amazing to see the kind of growth that's there. And it definitely, I think, is important just because I do have so many pieces that in the beginning, when I first was getting back into painting, I look back at them now and I'm like, can I just pretend that wasn't even me?
But that's where it came from.
Exactly. Yeah. I know. I try to focus on that back.
Of course.
It's interesting because as a...
You can go. Sorry.
I was just going to say, so like as a poet, obviously I can take my pieces, I can copy them, I can paste them, and then I can rework them and I get to see them in different iterations and I get to pull from them. And then I can say, oh, I hated that. Let me go back to the beginning. But like painting is such a commitment. If you're reworking a piece, you don't get to have that like kind of, it's definitely a luxury. So like, I think that's just such an incredible, it's a commitment to be like, I'm going to rework this portion of this thing and like hope it goes in that direction.
Yeah, especially with acrylic, it's really hard to just go back into just a part of anything without having to really rework the whole thing.
It all in, yeah.
You know, I try to keep it as minimal or anything. It's like this piece, I really just wanted to improve. And I basically ended up repainting it on top of it because it's just, you really can't do it any other way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know even, I mean, I've always been more of like a live-based artist myself in terms of like the pieces that I present or like the music that I perform. But every time that I perform, like every song that I've ever done is always a little bit different. And part of, I guess, my striving is to be like a live artist or a loop artist is that like I've always tried to sort of think through the idea of like, well, what am I feeling like now? Like, what does this piece need to be like now that I'm in this disposition and this time and this place? And it used to be sort of, but now the piece is different because now I feel different and now I can't connect to it in the same way that I did before. But as I've kind of grown as an artist, I've come to appreciate more the ability for that new disposition or that new place, that new experience to be able to like take its own shape and its own role within like any kind of work that's being presented.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think that part is kind of like a blessing and a curse because sometimes it helps enhance the piece that I'm working on when I go back and I realize that I'm in a different place, I'm in a different mentality, or my skill level is different than when I first started it. And that can make it hard just because it's like, that's not what I initially envisioned. So now it's a completely different piece, but yeah, I don't know. It's definitely a good thing, I guess.
Of course. Well, you know, we, I mean, we're just so that if people were like interested in like looking into your work and sort of like following up with you and the work that Galaxy Gus Art does, where would they be able to go to see more examples of your work and to be able to like be more involved in like, you know, the work that you're doing?
So I do have a website that's fairly new, and I do have to get some more listings on there, but I have a few of the smaller pieces for sale. Right now, none of these bigger pieces are going to be available really anytime soon, but I do have a lot of little pieces that I work on that are listed on my website, galaxygus.com. Cool. You can always follow my Instagram, is probably the most up to date usually. That's just Galaxy Gus. And then I'm on Facebook. I have my Facebook page, Galaxy Gus Art, but I also have a group that I run because, you know, algorithms. So it kind of makes it a little bit easier to streamline my work, I guess, on Facebook. And that's the Galaxy Gallery, which is named after my shop I used to have.
Perfect. Cool. I'll drop the link to those in the chat for y'all so you can make sure to check out Justina. I actually just your website was just up, and I love the Steal Your Face with the flowers all around it. Oh my gosh, it's so good.
Another unfinished piece. Actually, I started that in 2016 at Grateful Fest.
Oh, cool. Nice. And I see you also do like the face painting and stuff and body painting, which is awesome.
I cannot wait to get back to body art, and I fear that it's going to be a while for me.
I was curious when you think that that's a thing that people are going to be. I mean, like I went to get a haircut and they even were like, we can't do your eyebrows. Like you're not even allowed to physically like touch people's faces right now. So
it's hard too, because no matter how much I disinfect my brushes, just the idea of the fact that I'm, especially with children, obviously, you know, they're always a little sniffly and things like that. So painting and no matter how clean I can make them, I just worry right now during these times. And some of my other clients, you know, that I do full body painting for, I really try to push the maternity painting. I really like painting bellies because that's so much fun. But obviously I don't want to be around anyone who's expecting on just the chance that something could happen. So I'm worried that it probably won't happen till next year. But maybe sooner, but we'll see. I think it's going to be a bit for face painters.
Well, I'm glad that you're taking that responsibility. And I know even over for the fundraiser, we had Cyrus Chai and Coffee on, and he was talking about how they're taking their own stand on things because they're adding their extra layers of safety even when things open back up. And I think it's important for everyone to be taking their stands on safety, where even if something seems to have a green light, if you're not comfortable with it, you know, I think that's totally appropriate. And eventually we'll be allowed to do some of those things again, but obviously you have plenty of other things to keep you very busy. And live painting will still be able to be done, just not on human beings at the moment, I suppose. But very cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming in with us and you know, being able to like be a part of this fundraiser, donating your talents and your time and your care towards you know, such an important and a great cause. We were so happy and pleased and blessed to have you be part of what we were doing, and that blessing continues even to this day. So
thank you. I felt blessed to be a part of it.
Thank you. Thank you. So we are now going to be moving on to our roundtable discussion.
Nope.
Oh, whoa.
No, we have another friend.
Oh,
we have
another friend. I forgot about the friendships.
We had a wonderful friend who stepped in at the last moment to help us out because we had another artist, our other wonderful artist, Ariana Velasquez, who was another integral part of our live painting experience this week, had some things to take care of because God, don't we all. It has been a wild ride for everybody. So she was not able to join us, but let's give Ariana a great shout out. She was wonderful. It was great spending the whole, because basically Justina and Ariana hung out in our green room pretty much all day for both days of the fundraiser so that we could just drop in and check on their progress. So they got to see a lot of the inner workings and some of the fun and some of the chaos of the behind the scenes experience. But it was great to get to know both of you. And, you know, so Ariana was another great part of our broadcast, and we do miss her today. But we're gonna throw up a pause screen quick, and then we are gonna get an amazing friend, Barbara Joy of Barbara Joy Art, is gonna come on and chat with us for a little while. So thank you again, Justina. She will be back for a roundtable discussion in just a little while.
And we will be right back. Do not go anywhere. Thank you so much, Justina.
Tech Div Trish never stops partying. Just in case you wanted to know, she also has a Twitter, Tech Div Trish. And we're going to be dishing out some great tips on live broadcasting and other things related to that virtual endeavor. So you probably want to follow her because she is incredibly useful in so many facets. And now I am so pleased and so excited to bring one of my favorite humans and amazing poetesses and incredible visual artist friends, Barbara Joy, to our virtual stage. She is going to wow us with some of her work, and we're going to get to introduce her. She helped us out with some great stuff for the fundraiser behind the scenes. So we're really excited to be able to share her wonderful face. Barbara Joy is going to pop in and say hi real quick. And then we're going to get to chatting.
All right, so let's get that going. Barbara Joy, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Of course. Well, we're so happy to be able to have you, to be able to showcase who you are, the work that you do. You have been such a huge and integral part of a lot of the, it's definitely with getting VBT like off the ground. Like you immediately offered your heart, your care, your professionalism to everything that we were trying to do, and we really just we both really appreciate all the work that you've done for us.
Barbara Joy was very helpful. She has an
it's my pleasure. I love to help out.
Ooh, you're delayed a little bit, maybe? Hold on. Are you there?
Hello?
I think maybe it's back.
Oh. Can you hear us?
I can. There does seem to be a moment of a delay.
Yeah, there is a little bit of a delay happening there that was not happening before. The beauties of virtual broadcasting, friends. Maybe Trish is partying a little too hard.
Yeah, I think she's partying too hard. All right. Well, I think let's just make sure that we're all good. We're going to check in with the current setup that we have to make sure that everybody's in sync and everybody's linked up. So let's just throw up a pause, and for just a second, Trish is going to help us out with all of her technical diff expertise, and we will be right back. So thank you all for joining us. Trish is going to take care of it. We will be right back.
All right.
What's up, everybody? We're back. We're doing it. Yeah,
You know,
we did
maybe
it.
it wasn't fair to blame Trish. That might have been Zoom's fault.
Well, Trish still did a great job of making sure that we are going and that we have Barbara Joy with us right now. Once again, for everybody who may have not been watching, how are you, Barbara? How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy to be here. I love VBT. I love you guys. So I'm just thrilled to be here.
Of course.
Thank you so much. You've been such a huge supporter and such a big fan just from day one. And it means so much to have you as a friend, as someone that I've known for many years, as a poetess, and to be able to bring someone so close to me onto such a project that is so close to my heart really means a lot. And to get to introduce you to Rob, I know you've gotten to come to a couple of the Welcome Home open mics, but this is just, again, VBT's come to a lot of full circle moments for me of a lot of my beautiful experiences smushing together. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. My pleasure. It's been my pleasure this whole time.
Mm-hmm.
So as I was saying before, when we had our little thing, Barbara Joy has a great background already in not-for-profit work, and she was so helpful in kind of guiding us along that process, since it was a new experience for Rob and I, and learning how to work certain things and get certain things set up, and even a little bit of tech help on some of those things for our charity that we needed assistance with. So I want to thank Barbara Joy, and I want to thank Girls Inc. and the experience that you've gotten. And if you want to give us maybe a sentence or two about Girls Inc. as well, Barbara Joy.
Sure. So I'm the Associate Director of Girls Inc. of Long Island. It's a national organization, and our mission is to inspire all girls to be strong, smart, and bold. And we work, the Long Island affiliate is just Long Island, but there's over 80 affiliates across the country. So, I've been there. It's 7 years this month. I started as a volunteer, actually, and then I worked myself up to part-time and then full-time and then promoted to associate director about 3 years ago. So I feel really blessed and really lucky because I'm definitely a big advocate for women and girls. And that really threads throughout, I want to say, everything I do, even in the art space. So my art definitely focuses on depicting powerful women, particularly of late. I've been focusing on goddesses and my interpretation of goddesses using the natural world and the seasonal wisdom. In addition to that, to really create pieces of art that I consider to be goddesses.
I love that.
Yeah. So I have, I actually, last year was my first year, or actually it's this year because I created the calendar last year for this year, 2020, was my first calendar of my goddesses. And it's actually called Power and Bravery. So it's Moon Goddess Calendar 2020, Power and Bravery. Yeah. And all the goddesses depicted in here were based on seasonal and lunar wisdom.
I love my calendar. Yeah, I just took it off my wall.
Oh, thanks, Melissa. Yeah, Melissa's bought one. I think I have about 3 left. If anyone's interested, you can find me on Instagram at Barbara Joy Art, which links to my Etsy account for that. It's on super sale as well. And it's not up there now. It doesn't say that, but I will donate all the proceeds back to the Women's Diversity Network, which I'm also part of. And it's also a women's rights organization where we really work to collectively support equality around Long Island, throughout Long Island. So and even in the calendar, I have some quotes that I put up there that are really based around what's happening in the season and just informed by my own experience of just meditating and journaling about what I want to bring forth for that time of the year. And then I also have like the moon cycles on there as well. So so this year I'm actually working on my next one for 2021. So that's the project that I'm in now. Something that's also really important to me is depicting the goddesses as women of color. So including women of all racial ethnic backgrounds is also something that I strive to do in my art.
I see. Well, it's great. It's great that through the art that you have, that you're doing your best to show like the full representation of like all different cultures and all different backgrounds within the work that you're doing, and with especially for something like a calendar, as like a calendar is like something that almost is like a showcase of some kind. It's kind of interesting how like calendars in their own way have been this ever present art form that's always just been about like, here's a slideshow, and like holistically almost. I feel like if you want to buy a slideshow, you're going to buy a calendar. Sorry, I didn't interrupt you.
No. I mean, I love that you mentioned that because there's a real ritual to timekeeping that I find has been really supportive to me the last few years through what's happening in the natural world, through seasonal wisdom. And so combining that the art that I was making with a calendar just had such like perfect synergy. I'm still one of those people that actually has one of like an actual calendar where I will write stuff down. I use Google Calendar for work too, but for my own personal life, I do have one of the calendars that I open up and write it down. And it does have like this real beautiful practice for me of like timekeeping in that way, of looking through the different times of year and marking time in a way that is hopeful, I should say, right? Because I think when we feel like we're stuck in a rut or if we're going through a challenging time, you can mark time and you can look ahead, but you can also in the present moment take what's valuable from the winter, from like a barren season, through to summer, which is oftentimes very celebratory. But then when you think of going to the Christmas season or the Hanukkah, the holiday season, right? And whatever religion you follow, there is this real celebratory nature in that too. So I think sometimes when you're like in it, you don't always realize the excitement of the season until you go to maybe like a CVS and you see they're putting out the pumpkins, right? And then you get excited because you're like, ooh, it almost like pushes or propels you forward into feeling like there's always change and there's always some enjoyment that you can take from the season, whether you don't love cold weather or whether you love it, right? Like you can still find that there's some joy that you can get from it.
I actually. Oh.
No, I'd said before you go.
No, I was gonna say. So I was flipping through because I wanted to find one of the ones I really like. I'm an October birthday, so like autumn season in general is very special to me. But it's also a hard season because it's a transitional period for a lot of people. But the September one, I love. The quote is, "Turning inward, I return to myself," which is a really great example of like, just because you're inward doesn't mean that you're being like reclusive. And the fact that you curate it with like actual relevant quotes to what's going on, you put, "Autumn is a second spring where every leaf is a flower. With this autumn harvest moon, I return to what is most essential." And then like you have the room for the intentions at the bottom. So you're really bringing art, you're bringing nature, you're bringing all of these beautiful elements and you're putting them into how can you move forward and how can you do that. And I think it's great to have art that's not only visual. As a calendar person, I am very much like, it just kind of goes on my wall and it looks pretty and I value your artwork. I'm not a tangible calendar person. I'm a digital person, but I love having them on my wall and having those mantras and inspirations there because they are that interactive feeling. And I think it's great that you're able to embody all of that with your art.
Thank you. I'm so glad. And that was definitely my intention. And I've learned a lot. I've been taking a seasonal wisdom, lunar wisdom based class online in the last few years with my teacher, Natalie Rousseau. And she's very steeped in this sort of wisdom. And so that's been really supportive to me to think of like autumn, for example, as this time where we're slowly turning inward. We're slowly coming to ourselves, back to ourselves, right? From this extroverted, expansive time of summer, we're slowly like, almost kind of winnowing away of the non-essential and really thinking about what is most important as we head into like the more hibernation type season. And that can feel really tough for people to get away from the like bright half of the year, but it's also really important to realize the gifts that you can take from the darker side of the darker season of the year, which isn't necessarily dark in the negative way, just actually darker outside.
Yeah.
Really dark,
Yeah. Darkness, like I don't want to say like I've always been thinking about this, but oh, actually, wait, I have something right here that I can actually talk about this directly. Where's Daedra? All right, I have a journal of mine, and oh, here she is. So this is Daedra. Daedra is, I have many books. They're all named. They all have like different characteristics and different studies. But Daedra is this book of darkness, but it's not necessarily like just of darkness. But it's like, this is going to be backwards because of the mirroring. But it's basically a journal that I've kept when I was going through a lot of changes, especially when I was coming back into Long Island after living in Connecticut for like 4 or 5 years. And the book actually had started, and the Daedra got her name from just exploring at Kings Park, the psychiatric center. And I had this book in my hands. Like we had climbed all the way up to the roof. And I was thinking to myself, like, what is your name? Like, what is your name? And I felt like I've kind of been swirling in my own kind of darkness for a while. And then in the catacombs of that kind of darkness, I was trying to think of this name. And then all of a sudden I thought, Daedra. And then a drop of water fell like directly on the book itself. And I'm like, okay, that's probably what this means then. But she's been this like, even though like it's been more towards like darker themes and in towards exploring darkness, there's also like just this beautiful like galaxy like cover that she has that one of my friends had like made as the book kind of continued. And so the darkness itself wasn't necessarily something that had that negative connotation. It was something that where like within like the lighter parts of the world or the darker parts of the world, there is still beauty that can be found within both. And there's still destruction that can be found in light, and there's still destruction that can be found in darkness. But they don't necessarily have purely negative connotations. They have their own kind of way of being able to process them. And the same thing for winter as well. Like winter is not necessarily just a season that's only about the decay or maybe like the earth shutting down. There's also the quietness that comes with winter, especially when you get to like stand in like the snow and just like feel that like silence that you can't get anywhere else with any other season.
Yeah, and we need that rest like so much. So it's time to really rest and right, like animals in nature is like hibernating, right? And then taking their time so that you can have the energy in the brighter half of the year, right? Like you need both. It's kind of like the sleep cycle, right? Of night and day in a lot of ways. This is one that I'm working on this for November actually, but you can see at the bottom, she has mushrooms growing. And mushrooms, there's this fantastic movie called Fantastic Fungi. Did I say that right? That you should all watch. I think you can watch it for free on Netflix, or if you have Netflix. But it's fantastic. Oh, look, my husband just passed me the book. There's a book, Fantastic Fungi. But it's beautiful, not a very long movie, but it explores.
Who's the author? Who's the author? Is it Paul something with an S?
Paul Stamets, yes.
I know. Yes. I've seen him before.
Fantastic.
He's a genius.
Yeah, and this movie is so beautiful, and it actually did inspire me with like creating the mushrooms at the bottom, because if you see the movie, you see how like it's this full life cycle, right? We think of like fungus, almost like you just said, Rob, like decay, but it's really actually the other side of life, and like it spawns new life. So, and that's kind of how I think of November, like heading into that, that place of a little bit of more like murkiness and darkness, where then it spawns new life when we head to the winter solstice in December. And then that spark of light is lit, but we don't really feel it till we get to like February. You can even start to feel it. Like it feels cold in February, but you start to see the light coming out later and later. In March, you start to really feel like something's in the air, right? But that seed was planted deep in the darkness of winter. So that's the kind of the stuff that I've been exploring with my art, which has been really satisfying.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I know. Even like sometimes people don't necessarily like look at mushrooms as like these like interesting like creatures. They're just like something that just grows out of something that's like decaying or dying. But especially because Paul actually I've caught a couple of talks that he's done. He's actually also been on the Joe Rogan show, as well, and he goes into a lot of how complex like a lot of I think it's mycelial is the term. I'm probably messing that up, but how
Mycelium.
yeah, mycelium, how complex a lot of like like the sort of like the way that different mycelium are able to connect together and create these like super intricate like almost like neural networks of like all these different mycelium, and they'll like respond to each other. They'll respond if like one of them dies, or like there's different stuff, and they're like very intelligent in like this weird like hive mind almost kind of way. And that a lot of scientists are kind of studying these mycelium networks, to to sort of like learn how to like these sorts of things are able to like happen, and they're able to like propagate themselves.
Yeah, and have you seen the movie, Rob? Because it shows that.
I haven't.
Oh my God, it shows that visually. It's really awesome, and I would recommend, even if anyone, I'm not a medical doctor, but if you have any chronic issues or like. I know Paul, for example, who wrote the book, his mother, I think, was diagnosed with stage 3 or stage 4 cancer, and they did use mushrooms to help treat her illness. So it is something that is really, mushrooms have a lot of power and potency. So it's something worth, checking out and looking into. So.
I love that. Well, you said that's on Netflix, so we'll have to do a little watch party.
Yeah.
And
that would be so cool.
Oh, we'll have our first VBT watch party on Netflix.
Party. Yeah.
Yeah.
Justin's checking it out right now.
I love that Justin is just off to the side being like a supportive husband, such an amazing human. All right, great. Well, you know what, Barjoy, that was really insightful. And you said a couple of things that I want to bring up, especially about the women's diversity. And I would like to bring that over into our roundtable discussion. So I want to thank you specifically for being here, for all the help that you were to us, our continued support. Shout out to Girls Inc. for being an amazing organization. I did drop their link in the chat, as well as the Women's Diversity Network's link. Those are two organizations that you'll definitely want to be looking into. And thank you so much for your time and for your beauty and your just support and excellence. So we will be back in just a moment with our roundtable. You're going to see all of our guests, and we're going to have a really great chat about visual art and some of the ways that it impacts us. So hang out.
We will be right back. Do not go anywhere. We will be right back with our roundtable discussion. And we're joined by all of our friends.
Yeah, friends.
Friendship.
This is a beautiful group of people. Oh my God. Wait, we gotta do it. Wait, everyone unmute yourself. Artists supporting artists, 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 supporting artists,
supporting artists, supporting artists, supporting artists, all the way to the heavens.
Oh, my soul is singing.
It's the song of our peoples. Hi, friends. Hi, everyone that's tuning in. Thanks for being here. It is so amazing to sit in this room full of amazing visual artists and community leaders. And we're really looking forward to discussing a couple of different things today. And I thought we would kind of kick it off with a little bit of discussion since most of y'all were involved directly with the fundraiser in terms of artistic standpoint. I wanted to pose the question of, for those who are not visual artists or maybe those who just need some inspiration, how did you find your work methods changing or finding your need to adapt when you create work for either for the fundraiser or for any specific project versus when you're just home in your studio or in your space creating art? What are the ways in which you have to change your dynamic or even your actual execution of your work?
Well, for me,
I think we lost Andrew there for a second.
Might have lost Andrea for a second. Too much awesome in one room.
Too much awesome.
Too much awesome. Andrea broke the internet.
Yeah. Does anybody else?
Yeah, I feel like mine shifted. Like I started, I got this cool video app for my phone, and I just started fucking around with that. And that's the thing. Like I started getting like kind of obsessed with that, and then I realized like, oh, I could put audio over this. And then, you know, like it just started evolving from there. And I actually kind of got more interested in, like I was more focused on the visual part for a while. And now it's kind of just integrated it all together. It's been really fun.
Andrew, you want to try again?
Sure.
Okay.
So when I'm working for any project, but specifically the VBT project, I get super focused rather than this sort of like meandering self-propelled practice that happens in my normal day-to-day art making. And I think what sort of links the two like is just like a really like spending the time to make it perfect is absolutely essential and worth it to me. Like I'll spend any amount of time to make the presentation like pristine as I possibly can. And if I don't notice that there's like a little thing missing or off, then like probably my viewer won't. Once I get like super like so like clued into any given project in any given medium, I don't know, like for like days after I edited our Muse segment together, I was like understanding editing and TV shows like like so much differently. Like it's almost like consuming when I have that like really like focused like laser dot, this is what I'm making and it's for a specific thing. It just becomes like much more intense.
I can echo that too. Now as I'm working on my second calendar, there's something like very intentional and very intense about it. But when it's something where I'm working on more for myself, like almost like a self-soothing, it is a lot more loose, lot less precise, more just open and fluid. And sometimes I love the way that comes out even more than a piece that I might be working on intentionally. But like, even for example, like I will paint and actually like paint messages to myself that would be like supportive. Like I wrote, love equals understanding, love equals tension. Like I trust myself, and it's just like I'll write it in paint and then doodle or draw around it. So it's like I'm trying to, all right, I'm in some ways self-soothing through the words and the art at the same time. And that can be really nice and supportive when it's not for a project.
Yes, Brian?
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it's interesting. I was just thinking in terms of like, I did the VBT countdown, and I've done some regular collages that, paper collages, I should say, that are kind of more of driven by constraints. I think I'm a little more upfront with like what is kind of the playground that I get to play within to make the thing, because I think I learned with like the first person who I kind of like screenshotted. I remember making a paper collage for them, and I didn't have any constraints, and I was like, I know them as a person, they'll love, like, you know, and I'll make the thing. And then I made the thing, and they were kind of like, it's cool, you know, but like, and the artwork itself may be really great, but at the same time, like, it also has to fit that person's tastes and everything. So like, I will ask people, like, are there colors you absolutely hate? Is there like a subject matter that triggers you, you know, like, and it almost becomes like this psychological like questionnaire of like, you know, just like a few key questions to kind of like let me know what to do. And like, even for the VBT countdown, like, it was very much like music, art, the spider came in, you know, the tarantula came into play also. And it was like, okay, now I know the things I can mess with and these like weird arenas I can play within around that. So yeah.
Love that. Yeah, Justina.
To add on to what you were saying, Brian, I definitely agree. And whenever I have someone that tries to commission any kind of work from me, I'm always trying to gauge, you know, where their view on it is. And, you know, can you give me colors? Can you give me things you like? Anything that I should not include at all. And it's sometimes kind of difficult to pull that information out of, you know, a client or friend or whoever, because they just, I want it to be your vision. But so often they think that, and it's not really what they want. They do want what they're seeing, but they don't really know how to, I guess, you know, put it into the request that they're trying to make. And that kind of was in the beginning of, in the interview before, when I worked with the band and Ship on their digital designs for their album release. I kept going back and forth with Nick for a while, you know, and he was like, no, really, just like, you've got free range. And I'm like, I know, but I need a little bit more here. You wrote the music, like, help me, give me colors, give me what you were thinking about when you wrote the music. You know, I know what I feel when I listen to your music, but I kind of want it to match up more with where you're coming from, or if it's a logo for someone, like, I really want to make sure that I'm capturing what you see here. And I have to really remove like my opinions a lot of the time and really put their opinions, their thoughts, their values before mine. So that can be hard, but then that's kind of why it's nice when I do live painting of my own stuff and I can just feel the music and feel the colors and.
Rob.
Yeah, so definitely to go off of something like that. I know sometimes if, with some of the clients I've had with like the engineering work that I've done, you know, we kind of get to sort of you know, well, like how do you feel about like the mix right now, or like how do you feel about like what you're hearing within like the song or within the production or anything like that. And not everybody always has like the kind of like terminology to understand like what exactly it is. Like maybe some people might say, oh, well, you know, I think that, you know, that this, like, oh, there needs to be more of this because this is lacking, or than this, and like maybe we can have more like build up for the song, or maybe I think there needs to be more keywords in this part and something like that. Some people have like an exact idea of like what exactly they're looking for, but a lot of people don't. A lot of people don't have that formal understanding of like what the terminology is, or like even like formal understanding isn't even just like an understanding of the terminology, but like an understanding of like how to be like, I guess maybe specific when it comes to a certain subject matter, or like specific in the way of the like the use of the language and the way of expression. But I would say that a lot of times the best insight that I've ever gotten with when it comes to like working with people like that has been the informal responses, has been the ways of which like maybe they can describe something that isn't like something that's like exact. So sometimes like I'll be like, well, they'll be like, oh, I think it sounds good. But it's like, well, but what do you hear? Like, how do you feel about like this certain thing or this certain aspect of it? And they'll say, oh, well, I think it sounds a little, I feel like it doesn't hit as hard. Like maybe it sounds a little muddy, but I'm not sure. But even if they're saying muddy, I'm like, okay, they're saying it's not hitting as hard as saying it's muddy. Okay, that means that it's probably around like 100 hertz. That's like kind of, there's too much 100 hertz in there because they're not hearing the hit, which means they're probably talking about like the kick or like, you know, like the drop of the music or something like that. So I guess even informal ways of expressing or like informal ways of like understanding, I guess I would sort of hope that especially with the work I do, with the work that you do, Justina, or the work that we all do, that even in the informal ways of which it can be understood or expressed, that it tells us as artists like information that we can still use. You know, maybe it's not necessarily like this is exactly what I'm expecting and like this is exactly what I would expect within this piece of work and stuff like that, but especially like people, if you're watching this right now, you know, like even if it's not like a full description of what you're looking for, it still has weight and it still has power to be able to provide insight into something in ways that you may not necessarily expect. So I know that was a little bit of a tangent, but I just wanted to kind of respond to that.
So I think it's interesting because for my visual art, I mean, specifically for graphic design, obviously everything I do for VBT, I don't count that. I count that as just my art. But when I'm working with clients, like I find myself, I'm so much harder on the art that I make for myself than I make for others, but not in like a bad way. Like I care very deeply for what I put out for my clients. They are a representation of my brand. They are hopefully the thing that will continue to make me money. Like I do care about, but like even for my own personal logo and my business cards, like I took like a gross amount of time to like create my logo and my business cards. Like they were probably fine 5 iterations ago, but working for a client, it's easier because there is another person and they're the one that gets to tell you, I am happy with this, or this is the thing that I was looking for. But when you're creating for yourself, whether you're painting, whether you're composing a piece, whether you're working on a design, like I feel like the work is never done. And I find it very difficult. Like even with the website and stuff for VBT, like I ripped it apart. Like I was like, oh, we need to do all of this over. And like a normal person would probably be like, I thought it was fine. But like, so I think it's harder to self-soothe and self-satisfy your own art sometimes. When you're working with someone else on a project, they can say, it is good. And this is what I asked for.
Interesting. Yeah. I guess this might be a good way to transition to like one of the
hold
others.
on one sec. Andrea had
sorry.
So I think sort of what we're all kind of talking about here is like finding structure around which to kind of weave creativity.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like either talking to a client or even, you know, seeing the objective of a project as sort of like a loom and, you know, weaving through it to create something. It's sort of, it's a really like powerful tool to kind of like really build something, because if you're just kind of floating around in space and you have all of these disparate ideas, like nothing ever coalesces. It's impossible to coalesce something with no structure at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great transition into our next question, which is a little more broad, but at the same time very specific, is utilizing art. Most people who create art, we don't do it first to make money. It's a lucky, you know, sidebar if we make a couple of bucks off of our art. Most of us are making art to exist, to breathe, to get out of bed, to cope. So I'd love to hear some feedback about the ways in which you've used art through your life to cope, maybe how certain traumas or experiences have propelled your art in a direction, just anything with regards to utilizing that art to help you cope with either current events or just life in general.
Yes. Brian.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just thinking of, and I always forget his first name, but I know if you look him up by his last name, you'll find him. So I think his first name is like Giuseppe or something, but his last name is Vico, Vico. And he basically, like, for all the dense things he's written, like the gist of what I took away from hearing about him was, I was like, yes, that's me, was when he talked about, like, I don't understand something until I create something based off of that thing. So, like, for me, if I'm processing something that's like heavy emotionally, which I know in the year 2020 there's nothing, and we all have to look around very hard to find something, but pick any topic. And you know, like, for me, like, writing a poem or journaling around that thing, or even making a collage that, like, in a really indirect way, there's like this almost invisible internal knot in me that I can feel untie when I do that. And when I don't do that, I will struggle to figure out what the thing is that I'm thinking around that until I make the thing. So it's like, I need to make stuff in order to figure out what my real thought process is. And I would almost amend, there's this quote that Kevin Kelly says about, like, I don't know what I think until I write it down. Like, I would amend that to say, like, I don't know what I think until I make something out of it. Like, so yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I make my way through the world, I guess.
I love that. I don't know what I think until I write it down.
'Cause you don't.
Yeah. I mean, I know for me, in terms of visual art, not necessarily graphic design, because I definitely find my graphic design to be more business oriented. It's not really a thing I go to when I'm stressed or looking to just express myself. My graphic design is definitely more project minded. But when I like paint, or I make my pinback button collages, or anything where I'm like, my studio is tossed upside down and all of my stuff is everywhere, like, that is me coping. That is my fingers covered in paint. That is flowers thrown all over my floor. Like, my coping is messy. And I doubt very few people have neat, tiny bows of coping, but my coping manifests physically. And I just want to go into my studio and make a mess. And I have 7 million different things. And it's like a Barney bag in my studio. And I'm just like, what do I want to do? And I just vibe. I don't have a direction. I don't have an image in my head, because I'm not a painter. I'm not I'm just a person who takes stuff and just blah, and that's my coping. And it's interesting because I feel all of the energy leave my body when I do it. And that's why it's messy. And even if I'm happy, it's still that same messy feeling of getting all of that energy and expelling it outward with paint or anything like that. Or even when I play my steel tongue drum, like, that's just vibing. Like, I'm just hitting it and my eyes are closed and I'm rocking and I'm just kind of like feeling all of this stuff. And I think that even when I have no idea what my end result will be, and it is literally just this abstract expulsion of physical energy and chaos.
It's almost like the expression of the arts themselves. I mean, maybe not for everybody. I feel like everybody has like a different way of utilizing the arts, whether it's as a consumer, whether it's as somebody who creates the arts themselves. You know, people have different ways of coming to it and utilizing it, as whether it's to cope, whether it's to express oneself, whether it's to unlock a lot of maybe some of the inner dialogue within themselves. Maybe it's to stimulate dialogue amongst other people, amongst other brothers and sisters. And I know that, like, for me, like, my art is kind of something that coalesces in a couple of different ways, almost depending on what the medium I'm using to express is. Because there are some instances where it is for a personal reason, and there are other times and other songs that I've written that are more about like telling a story and like sort of understanding the what's around that story and the feelings around that story and like the way that it's composed and the way that it's put together, and other I guess artful expressions are about sort of just like expressing my own inner thoughts like outwardly as a means of which to kind of cope. There's been a couple of things that have kind of come down the woodworks for me within like with as a creator itself in terms of like me being expressed and me being able to cope. But most interestingly, one of the ways of which coping has kind of taken place for me has happened not as a creator, but as a consumer of art. I know that there's like one particular playlist that I play on repeat all the time, constantly, over and over again. And it is the chill hop lo-fi beats to study to playlist. It has been, I mean, I love it. I've been listening to it very, very long time, but especially during quarantine, especially during a time where I'm in this room, like in this studio all the time, and I'm either doing things, working on VBT, working with Melissa, especially all the work that's had to go into making the fundraiser happen. And even before the fundraiser happened, just being in this room, being in an isolation, it's music that has kept me up. And it's really, really allowed me to cope in a certain way that I don't think that a lot of other music could. Because the music itself is more about, like, being intimate, like, being alone, in a sense. Because, like, you know, you see the raccoon on the screen, and he's just chilling in his room by himself, listening to music, scrolling, you know. So it is music that's kind of centered towards this idea of, like, intimacy and, like, being alone, but not of loneliness, but more of just, like, being able to exist singularly and find peace in that. And so with that, like that's music that has definitely kept my spirits and my endeavors like towards a much more straightforward and righteous path. Just because it's been this like constant reminder as quarantine has happened and as things have continued.
Andrea.
So for me, my entire life I've been an artist, just the whole time. For me, creating and making things and making art and crafting things is just like a constant in my life. And but within that, I kind of use it as a way to like question myself and challenge myself and kind of do this kind of like self inquiry about like the patterns that I fall into. So, and sort of one way that like, it sort of helped me like work out some kinks in myself is, when I was doing my undergrad and I was a painting major and I was, you know, showing up to my canvas every day and making these figurative paintings that sort of like had nothing to do with what I was really interested in, but I showed up to it because I sort of linked myself into that place where I was like, I'm a painter, this is a thing that I do. And so I was showing up, and the place that I was really finding joy and finding like a cathartic moment and finding freedom was in just mixing the paint. And at a certain point, it was just really frustrating. I was showing up and these paintings were kind of like boring and they were all a little bit the same and I wasn't getting anything out of it. And I think my viewer wasn't either. And so I kind of stepped into this place where I was like, well, what if I just take away all the things that I don't give a shit about? And so I did. I took away all of the elements of a painting that weren't working for me. So like the traditional rectangle or the square and the stretcher bars and the canvas. And I sort of like stripped it all back and just started playing with paint and seeing where it went. And just that kind of like stripping it back and like tearing away all of the expectation that I had placed on myself, that other people had placed on myself, that I had built my identity around this, like, I'm a painter thing, sort of like, you know, when like when the Hot Wheel car goes around the track and there's that like little thing that like zooms them through the loop, that was the equivalent of zooming me through the loop. It was just like an incredible amount of acceleration. And, you know, sort of as I moved through this, it was just a series of challenging myself about my preconceived notions and And over time, you develop those notions again and again and again, and kind of like using the constant of being a creative person, and I'm always going to be a creative person. I just can't help it at a certain point, I just can't help it. It like using that kind of like mode of creativity to kind of like strip back the things that aren't working. And sometimes it's almost like in an almost violent way, like just tearing apart the painting in order to get to the thing that I need to say, and to get to the thing that's more authentic, and to be my most authentic artist.
Love that. Justina.
Sorry, I had to mute myself because of all this traffic. But so just to piggyback kind of off what you were saying a little bit, I've also been an artist since I can remember. And I think it's also in the beginning what kind of hindered my growth, because being born naturally talented, people put a lot of expectation on you and a lot of pressure on you. And it upset me that everyone had decided my future for me by that, because I was so naturally talented that must be what I want to pursue. And it always made me feel very limited in the things that I could do. And it made me feel like, well, then I have to be this just because I'm good at this. Like, why can't I also do these other things? And that really continued. Like, a lot of people, when I did show interest in other things, really was like, well, that's not you. Art is you. It's like, I do love art, but I really wanted to find myself in other areas. And painting in high school, I actually kind of felt similar to, where like I loved mixing the paints. For some reason, orange became my happy color. Whenever I painted with orange, I was like, oh my God, I just love this paint and the brush, and it's great. But the paintings themselves bored me. And I understand why the still life and everything, I really needed to learn techniques and structure and things like that. But I just wasn't connecting with the paint the way I wanted to. And it was really difficult. So I actually kind of gave up on art for a really long time. And it wasn't until I was in my mid-20s again that I picked up a brush again. And it's interesting because when I look back and I realized that when I was in some of my lowest points, I wasn't creating anything. And then when I really started to dive back into creating, that I was able to pull myself out of those moments. So now, because I recognize that when I do find myself going into really low points, like in the beginning of quarantine, things were really difficult. I felt just blockages. And sometimes when you're feeling those blockages, you just have to just start painting, and you just have to go, whether you have a vision or not. And so a lot of times I will just focus on which paints are making me feel good when I'm mixing them, and like what colors are really just sticking out. And I'll just start going with it. And then things will just start to come out of the painting. Sometimes you can't go in with an idea. The idea comes as you just go. So yeah, I also love to be messy, Melissa. I was very much resonating with that too.
Yeah. Otherwise, like, what's the point?
Yeah. No, cover me in all the paint. It's great.
Yeah.
I think that's where the body painting.
Yes.
What you got?
Pete, I saw your hand.
You got to hit unmute. There we go.
It wasn't working on my thing.
Yay, Zoom.
I feel like I didn't really realize I had something of value to say until I met my buddy Mike Clarity at this open mic. We met at this, I was like maybe 20 or 19, and we met at this little cafe open mic, and I got up and read, and he was like, yo man, I really, really like that. And I didn't realize, like, oh, this is like something that somebody else like would make, like it would make sense to. And so the way I kind of always structure my work is I have a statement in mind. Maybe like there's like a grounding statement in, like maybe it's just a line, and I sort of build everything else around that. Other things that match that statement, things that are opposing that statement. And I don't know, I just always sort of structured my work that way. And now that I'm including music, I was always interested, like, until Ableton was created, I wasn't able to like make music really the way that I want to make it, because I want it heavily controlled. I want it to be able to really go all over the place. And Ableton has really provided that framework, and I never really put the two together until now, because I didn't think, like, maybe more like dark, synth heavy, dance music is exactly the background for poetry. But somehow they really just mix together well. Like I just started experimenting with it, and it really works. And it's nice to see two things that I really, really appreciate, come together. But yeah, so I build around statements usually. That's usually how my process.
Mm-hmm. I see. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
I think we had Barbara Joy and
Barbara Joy, yeah.
So I also have identified as an artist my whole life, and I do think that's part of people around me encouraging that natural tendency in me. And I also really resonate with the love of mixing paints. I've had moments where, not even moments, I want to say the whole time that I'm painting, I'm often transfixed by the sexiness of the paint. Someone once said that to me. I think they were like, they noticed that like I just kept painting and like fixing and making layers, and I just loved the feeling of painting, like actually like the paint itself on the canvas. And she's like, you're mesmer, like you need to like relax, like you're actually like ruining your painting because you're so mesmerized, you're so intoxicated by the paint, and that feeling of painting. And it's interesting, I've had paintings where I feel like I've ruined them because of that love of the tactile sensation of the paint itself. But what I wanted to say too is thinking about the encouragement of myself and other people here who've mentioned being encouraged, it does make me wonder if that has been a barrier for others who could have easily become artists or identified themselves as artists if they had only had people tell them, wow, you're amazing, you're an artist, right? And I think I'm proud, and I hold that identity very strongly as an artist. And I think it also calls to that revolutionary part of myself, where it's not just about creating in the sense of creating a project or a painting or an art form, but it's about looking outside the box at things and looking at society in general, and thinking of it, and maybe not taking it at its face value, thinking of like, if I could restructure society as a painting that I would create, what would that be like, right? So I think there's this natural almost activism, and I know we're going to get to that in art, that is so fundamental to me as being an artist, of looking at the world in a different way that's unique, and not just settling for the status quo. But I'll add one last thing, not even related so much to that, but I do think as an artist, I also identify that at its core, I think of art as creation, and that we're creating each moment and living inside of that creative process of expressing ourselves and creating our reality. Not in the sense of The Secret, because I actually kind of hate that book, but but in the sense of we are living as creative beings all the time. So even when people don't identify as artists, they are artists. And I think that's me kind of widening the view of what art is, because I think ultimately, I think art is everything. Just like as a yoga teacher, I think yoga is everything. I feel like there's a real a philosophy there of what I think art and creativity calls for. And I think life lives inside of that philosophy, and it's encapsulated by it.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. It's a great segue into our next question. It's also a really great example of the values of VBT. And I know we had spoken with Andrea and Pete during their interview about that feeling of everything being art and being able to showcase everything. And VBT's mission from day one is that all of the arts are equal and that we are all artists. I mean, we had cooking segments, we had interviews with broadcast engineers. Those are all art. They are a thing. For my personal definition of art is create a thing that didn't exist before. Everything is art. Everyone is a poet. Everyone is an artist. Everyone is a creator. So I love that. And that brings us to an interesting mention. And then, like I said, we had discussed a little bit with Andrea and Pete, the discussion of taking your art now and adapting it to the current platform of digital experience. I mean, obviously Rob and I hit the ground running, and we took our art and we made it virtual side, and we wanted to bring everybody there. And we encountered a lot of people who were like, well, I don't really know how to do my art virtually. I don't know how to create this in a different way to present and show and share. And we've been really lucky to have some experiences with people who are playing around with different mediums and doing different things. So I want to hear your experiences with, have you decided to take your art virtually? What are challenges? Anything related to the new normal that we're rocking right now with all of the art involved? Anybody?
It's an interesting question.
Yeah, Justina.
I mean, really for me, I'll just say that I started diving into digital art itself last year for the first time. And it's definitely, I say this all the time, but it's the biggest learning curve that I've really encountered as an artist. Because of my natural talents, I feel like I've always usually been used to kind of picking up things a little bit easier, and learning how to create digitally using Procreate and stuff has just been something that I really, have struggled with, but I also think that's necessary. I shouldn't, I should just get better with it and stick to it. And so I've been trying to, and that's also made it easier in a time like this where it's not really easy to be able to show my pieces, to people. Although I try to paint on the open mics and still do live painting in live videos, it's just you're not able to necessarily connect the same. So it definitely makes it easier working with clients and things like that. And also being able to, make things a little bit quicker, because it takes forever to paint sometimes. So yeah, I think that's all I'll say.
Mm-hmm.
I think Andrea, I saw your little finger in the air before.
Yeah. Oh, hello.
Hello.
So I think what was really interesting at the beginning of isolation, where we saw so many things shifting so much, from a very in-person physical experience to virtual experiences, was that I was very conscious of the fact, even being an artist, that if we look at what the artists do to communicate first, we can sort of almost track the trajectory of what larger organizations are going to do as far as translating all of these experiences virtually. And it was really inspiring to see so many different ways to kind of translate what people were doing to a virtual experience. And it's an entire world of different ways to kind of achieve this. And we were so lucky to have, everybody suddenly was engaging a lot online. It was really interesting to watch. And I know for us, we were really quick to move online. We had canceled our mic for the first time in a really, really long time on March 12th. And our first virtual open mic was March 19th. And I had no idea what to expect, and things did not go as planned. And we were super late. We started super late. And I was trying all day to get my act together, but the act wasn't coming together. And we kind of landed in a place that actually really worked for us. And I think it's really interesting to note that with everything shifting so much and everybody's so new to these different ways to showcase art, that our viewers and the people in our community are super forgiving and super here for it, and here for the many ways that it can fail in the moment, and stick with it.
Yeah, I definitely think that was a part of the reason that VBT could do what we did, is because we were really learning along the way. I mean, Rob obviously had broadcasting experience, but generally speaking, like, we worked a lot of this out in front of y'all, and like the community was just like, yes, do the thing. Because, and any Zoom room that I was in and anything that I worked with, even if it wasn't VBT related, everyone was just like, it's cool, we're gonna figure it out, this is new. And like, I think that's been like this really cool equalizer thing where like none of us are super great. Some of us are better than others, but nobody's like, I got this down, I've been doing this forever. And like, it was that super nice. And I remember the first Muse and y'all were like, we're running late. And I'm like, I'm going to keep drinking my beer because I don't have anywhere to be. And y'all don't know what you're doing and neither do I. So it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but I think that, you know, regardless of like the struggles that we have, or especially when it comes to breaking into new medium, or to break new ground, you know, and to pioneer something, because that's kind of like, in our own ways, like that's what we've been doing, is kind of being these like digital pioneers in our own way. You know, it's hard. It's not easy, especially when like it's not necessarily that like there's a rule book in terms of like how to host like a virtual events that's geared towards the arts.
Not yet.
You know, there wasn't really a rule book that was written like going into this. It's not like I could just go on YouTube and like look into like how to run a virtual open mic online on YouTube. It just wasn't a thing. But you know, I think that with the struggles and with everything that we have, you know, through those struggles we grow and we learn, and that's what struggling is all about. You know, there's a lot of growth that comes from pushing ourselves, and pushing our limits that we may think that we have, or that even just the limits that are currently imposed upon us because of the limitations in technology. But you know, I mean, I could at least say for myself, like I've always been very, very proud of what the Muse Exchange has done every step of the way, and you know, you've definitely made really, really good fans out of both myself and Melissa at VBT.
Oh, thanks.
Did anybody else have any last remarks to that? Yeah, Pete.
I said I was thinking like the one constraint like I feel like we keep coming up against is the platform itself. You know, that seems to be like the one thing that it's gotten better over time. In the beginning, it was super glitched out. It was a lot bigger of a problem than it currently is. And I think, you know, the people who run these platforms have realized these things. But I would say that's the one constraint, like, is, you know, you are a little stuck with whatever it is that, you know, you're currently using, and there's not really a ton you can do about it. But other than that, I would say it's really been wonderful.
It's been fun to pioneer.
It is, yeah. And I think I also I think that this is gonna it's obviously changing the platform, because the way that Facebook was doing watch parties at the very beginning when we started, it's not even close to the way that the watch parties go now. Like, it's way cleaner. It's a way easier experience. I don't know with Zoom if that's been your guys' experience, or has it gotten worse? I don't really know.
Zoom just has updates like constantly, especially once the security levels were having issues. So they're just continually updating, and Streamlabs and OBS is continually updating, and Restream is like, all of the platforms are continually figuring things out. So when we have several moving components, so a lot of things change, and I feel like every time one of them sorts itself out, the next one has decided to do a thing. So it's usually consistently chaotic for us.
Yeah. I know that, like, I feel that like the sort of changes in presentation and the changes on platform that like we've all have made as individuals, like it's one of those things where, like, especially like my brother currently works right now. He works in Amazon right now. Rich, if you're watching this, I appreciate your struggle. But he basically, you know, he's in charge of coding basically a lot of the back end that takes place with like AWS, with like all of the server and the cloud servers that Amazon runs. If people don't know this, like Amazon basically owns, I think it's like over 60% of the American internet. Like 60% of the American internet and like websites and like all that kind of stuff is based in AWS and based off of Amazon servers. And if anything, that makes them more money than the store does, which is kind of weird.
Wow.
But basically, you know, they've had to push out a lot and had to make a lot of changes, especially now with a lot of people being online and things being virtual. And now, like, the servers that even just like the raw computing power, like a lot of the servers have been under crazy amounts of stress, and it's not necessarily consistent amount of stress because it can literally depend on a region by region basis, you know. So you can have individual reasons where you're having servers being completely taxed to their limits, or just like, you know, going down, or anything kind of that stuff. And especially when you're talking about like pushing changes that like need to be made on a platform in order for the platform to be consistent, like that's it's a rough endeavor on its own when you don't when you're not under the microscope of, I need this to work because I'm trying to get things happening virtually, or, you know, I need this, or, you know, we're rolling out a new feature. You know, even just rolling out a new feature is like not something that usually happens cleanly, and there's usually a lot of bug fixes and updates to the things, and but I would say that even with a lot of these like struggles that take place on our end, that like a lot of these struggles that take place on like the larger scope of like these bigger problems to kind of tackle, when you're like magnifying it by like hundreds and thousands of times and hundreds of thousands of people, it's difficult. But at the very least, I've never felt that, like, at least with the main platforms that we're using, I've never felt that any of the companies that we kind of depend on, maybe with the exception of Facebook, have kind of dropped
other
the
than
ball.
Facebook.
I mean, Facebook still needs, like, their UI is still
Facebook's been
broken.
switching to new Facebook for 3 months. Like, can you just
like,
commit now?
It's like they rolled this out 3 months ago. They did it early because they wanted to like introduce this new layout when they had the momentum, and it's 3 months later and the UI is still broken, and I just don't get it. But that's just me.
Yeah, but that's definitely an obstacle. Yes, Andrea, you'll give us our last statement on this, and then we want to move to the next one.
Oh, I think even like in all of the chaos of organizing artists at this time, like just like the amazing art that people are creating on this like backdrop of like everything that's happening out in the world is almost like this change, and this change in platform has almost been like a catalyst for all of this new amazing work in a new format on a new platform with a new sort of reach in terms of how many people you can get your work in front of is really like an inspiring thing.
Absolutely. And that's, you know, again, that's something that Rob and I feel very deeply about. With this is an equal playing field, first off. I mean, there are obviously barriers. You need to learn software and things like that. But in the grand scheme of availability, I don't have to get anyone to come to a venue. I don't, like, you literally just have to be my friend on Facebook or Twitch or YouTube, and you could see my stuff. Like, my parents watch my stuff now. My parents were not coming to bars to see what Melissa was up to on a Tuesday night. And like, my musician friends get to see my poetry now versus when we would normally be gigging at the same time, and we don't have time for that. We're trying to pay our bills. So it's definitely been this platform of openness and reaching. And even VBT, we have someone that plays with us from Sicily. We have someone from Chicago. We had someone DJ from Canada the other night. That's not happening in real life, you know. So that's another cool reach. And that's a good segue into our final question today, which, in terms of reach, in terms of change, in terms of expression, obviously the current political climate, not that it's not always a mess, but we are in an extra particularly messy scenario right now between isolation, the Black Lives Matter movement, the protests that are going on. And I want to discuss and hear your opinions and your thoughts about the ways in which art can be utilized during these times, what the role of visual art is in this, whether it's a mandatory role, whether it's the roles you're taking, whether it's why are we not doing X, Y, or Z, as well as how you're utilizing your art during these current endeavors. So whoever wants to start us off on that.
Sure,
Pete.
Yeah, I feel like since we're in isolation, the way most of us are getting what's happening right now is through like a visual auditory format. And a lot of that is like very, very potent images. There's a lot of art being used, like with people, especially like, you know, cities where the mayors are cool and they're doing big Black Lives Matter on the streets with all sorts of art to accompany it. I think that there's something distinctly unique about this versus, you know, when I was a kid and they were having the riots out in LA, which seemed more just like mayhem. There's something more beautiful about this. There's something more profound, I think, because there is like the people putting the message out there are able to control it a lot more, actually. So like all these people were saying, oh yeah, this is just people rioting and tearing things up. It's like, no, these are peaceful marches with a very, very profound message. And I think it's really getting through. I think most people are really seeing through just what bullshit goes on a day-to-day basis. And, you know, the average Black life, seeing how, you know, our president just is not responding in, like, he had already failed to respond in a solid way with this pandemic, and then I think this continued failure of a way to meet this new challenge is just really sinking his ship. And there's something I don't think if it was happening in another way where we weren't paying attention to it in such a visual auditory way, I don't know that it would have had the same reach. Like, it's global, you know, it's like it's all over the world. You know, there's people in war-torn parts of the world who are having Black Lives Matter, you know, rallies where, you know, there might not even be Black people. I mean, so I think that there's something about the internet and its ability to transmit the struggle of Black people in America. And I don't know, I really, really find this particular medium to be like suitable for this. It's cutting through a lot of the noise that we normally have.
Justina.
Hi. Yeah, so I wanted to piggyback off what you're talking about with the big Black Lives Matters murals that are happening in the streets. I was actually looking at some of the ones happening in, I believe it was Oregon, and they're gorgeous. And I think it's really showing the way that this movement is about community before anything. It's about the inclusivity that everyone is after. And, you know, going to the protests, you feel that there's just such a sense of community and compassion among each other. And that's just what we want for everyone, from everyone. And the art, I just think, is so necessary right now, because you can type out as many words as you want and explain yourself to so many people as much as you want, and they just don't have to grasp that. But when you show something so visually, whether it be beautiful or shocking or terrible, it hits different. And I think that's so important right now with getting the message across to people, and, you know, I guess just, you know, sharing the beauty that we're trying to get to. And I just think that throughout everything that's ever happened in all of history, there's always been a need for art throughout those moments, whether it be just to cope. Sometimes you just need something beautiful to look at so that you feel that hope and that you know, continue on, basically. But then it's also necessary to make you feel something and to break your heart and to really push you to want to help that change and help bring that beauty that can come from it forward. And yeah, I think that's mostly what I had to say about that.
I see. Yeah, I think that there's a larger role that like the arts can play, and it's really, really great to be seeing that kind of start to happen. I don't have too much to add in the adder. I think Andrea had something to add as well.
I think what's interesting about what Justina just said is that, you know, as an artist, I think, you know, you think about what message am I sending, and should I be sort of shifting the work that I make to kind of fit with the time, and like, do I have a responsibility to do that as someone making art and to activate my work in that way? And I think that all art right now has a place. Like Justina said, sometimes people just need something beautiful to look at and to soothe them. And, you know, art has the power to kind of activate people and to be a catalyst for things, but it also serves like a very fundamental purpose for people, kind of feed their souls, and to kind of bolster them as well. And sometimes something that is beautiful is just as powerful and as necessary and as needed as something that's overtly an activist piece.
Yeah, I love that sentiment. I think it's important to have beauty in the world, even if it's not directly dialoguing with what's going on. It's that uplift or that relatability. Barbara Joy, did I see this? I don't know if this.
No, but I do love seeing the depictions of activists through art as well. I think there's something, it kind of combines this beauty that we're talking about with also activism, right? So there's this 7-year-old girl in Merrick who has become a little bit famous. I don't know if you've seen her little clip of her at a march that's very powerful, but I've seen really beautiful drawings or abstract images of her. And there's something really beautiful about taking activists and making art out of their image. And of course, the people who have been murdered too, but and remembering them in a really beautiful way. So I think that has a power too.
Yeah, I think between the Black Lives Matter movement, between isolation, the art and the expression, I mean, even obviously Black lives have always mattered and are always important, but even before the incredible amount of uprising and protest, just isolation alone was producing incredible amounts of art because a lot of us were finding time off. And I mean, how many times have you gone to a gig and everyone says, what are you up to? What are you working on? And then there's also a laundry list of, well, this is what I'd like to be working on, but I work 40, 50 hours a week. And all of a sudden we were like, we don't have to work 40, 50 hours a week. So it was opening up that platform of art. And we all know that art is kind of rebellion. And that pushes against that systematic change of like, we should be working 40, 50 hours a week so that we can't be out there protesting, so that we can't be pushing back, so that we don't have time to vote, so that we don't have time to watch the news and pay attention to what's going on. So all of these things have sort of begun at the same time where now we're all home. We all have a platform. We're all listening. You can't possibly ignore the Black Lives Matter movement if you wanted to, not that anyone should be, but it is everywhere. Art is being utilized to express that, which brings in a new, maybe even a demographic of people that weren't particularly politically active. Art is a very easily digestible piece of content, especially visual art, where it's just, I just have to look at it. I don't have to read. We're a lazy bunch sometimes, like reading a book or even an article for some people is just not a thing that they do. But you can't ignore a photograph. You can't ignore a painting. You cannot ignore a mural. Yeah,
I just want to add on to that quick, because I also feel like as an artist, and I know a few artists that I spoke to in the beginning of the pandemic, I think that we all really tried to see a silver lining with the fact that we just knew that there would be a renaissance that would come from it, that beautiful art was going to happen because we had no choice. And I think that it's so interesting that, this movement has even just amplified that even more. And we're just seeing a surge of that. And you mentioned the pictures of the protesters and things. And I just really want to say thank you to the photographers that are documenting such important things that are happening, because that is such an important piece of art right now for a time like this. And it's so necessary. And I appreciate everyone that has put themselves in harm's way to capture what needs to be captured.
Yeah, and photographers are high on the list of people in protests that are at risk because they are recording. Yep. I'm a photographer. I don't know that I have it in me to do something like that. That is a huge commitment to not only take thousands and thousands of dollars of gear and put that on the line, and then your physical body, but to capture so many important moments in history and then have someone say, F you, you're not supposed to be here, smash your gear on the floor. Maybe you get tear gas, maybe you get assaulted. They are really, not that everybody in a protest is always at risk, but photographers tend to be, journalists, photographers die in war-torn countries because they are out there showing what's going on. And it is very inspirational, and all of that visual art coming out. The protest signs are works of art on their own. There's been a lot of beauty and incredible stuff that has come out of this ugliness, and I hope unification obviously is the thing that we're pushing for the most. But yeah. Does anybody else have any last remarks? We wanna wrap up. We're running a little late, but this is an important topic of discussion. So okay. Well, thanks everyone for being here, for having important conversations, for having difficult conversations, for continually perpetuating the importance and urgency of art, of visual art. I think that, music is one of those things. Everyone listens to music, and it's kind of this tangible thing. And poetry is like they all stand on their own individually, but I think visual art is the thing that kind of threads it all together, especially in the digital age, as we've experienced with what the Muse is dealing with having your visual art and the rest of those elements of music and poetry kind of smooshed together and be this new experience in a virtual landscape, and to be able to see all of your individual endeavors and live arts and passions and creativity expressed has been really, really amazing. And I'm really lucky, and I know Rob will probably feel the same, to be here in a room with such incredible people doing what the world needs right now.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. Anything. So with that, we really, really do want to extend our gratitude and our thanks to each and every one of you for the work that you do, that you've been doing before quarantine, during quarantine, and certainly the work that we know that you will be doing for the future. It really, really does mean a lot to see such beautiful and wonderful people contribute to the arts, contribute to the community, and strive towards true greatness within this world. And we're really, really just so grateful that call you, to call you family, and to be fighting this fight arm in arm together. So thank you, Barbara Joy. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Pete, and thank you, Justina. I know Brian was having some technical difficulties, so he had to pop out for just a second. But in the spirit of Brian, I just wanted to, at the very least, pop up Brian's digital collage up on the screen, since we aren't able to thank him in person. As an individual, then at the very least, we can at least showcase the great work that he's been able to do. It's been so great having Brian on as our collage artist, and to be able to have such a great start to the fundraiser. And we are just so grateful for Brian for all of his efforts. So, Brian, if you're watching this, or if you happen to pop in just in time, we really, really can't thank you enough for all the work that you've done and for everything that you've done to, give VBT such beautiful and creative work.
Should we close out with an artist supporting artists? I feel like that's the way to go.
That's the way to go. That's the way to go.
Yeah, it's been such a joy to work with all of you, to have such integral parts of VBT as a community and the fundraiser be taken in by you with so much passion. Not a single person involved with the VBT fundraiser didn't treat it like it was their own, and I think that was amazing, because we are all sitting in this difficult time and difficult parts of our life, and a lot of us are falling apart at the seams, and to see the people who just stepped up and were like, yeah, my life's a mess, but we want to help raise money for artists. I mean, I think it's why we all do what we do. So
yeah. So
let's
with that, let's give it a nice supporting 3,
artists.
2, 1. Artists supporting
artists, supporting artists, supporting artists, supporting artists, supporting artists, supporting artists, supporting artists, supporting artists, supporting artists, supporting artists, supporting artists, supporting artists.